NOAA thinks 2022 will be the 7th above average year in a row, with 14 to 21 named storms, 6 to 10 hurricanes, and 3 to 6 of those becoming major hurricanes. That is right in line with what we had last year. I talked with some of the top minds in hurricane forecasting. Their message: Florida has been lucky the past few years, and that luck will run out.
Get ready for severe weather this summer. Colorado State University releasing its Atlantic Basin hurricane forecast, and it's not good. Forecasters are predicting 19 named storms this season. That's 5 more than normal, and 9 are expected to become hurricanes. Now, 4 of those predicted hurricanes are expected to reach Category 3 or higher.
Now on the night team, activity in the Gulf with hurricane season less than 2 weeks away. Meteorologist Brent Cameron is in the Weather Center with the details on this disturbance. Brent.
So everybody, this is a spin in the northern Gulf of Mexico, part of a small area of low pressure. And it's this time of the year that we, of course, monitor and follow every disturbance that spins up over water. So there you see it's very close to land, that small low pressure area. We already had one wave of showers and heavy gusty thunderstorms that made its way toward the panhandle. There's a still image of where it remains now, about 100 miles to the southwest of Pensacola. Now, the National Hurricane Center is giving it a very tiny 10% development chance, and it has very little time to develop, not expected to do so as it moves off to the north with very high pressures in place. By the way, there's that disturbance moving tomorrow over land, so that'll be the end of that. Just an area of stormy weather moving into the southeastern states.
Upper 80s is where we actually top out today. Rain chance low, but I have spotted a few showers out there. I'll show you those in just a second. But first, I have to talk about this. The first tropical disturbance of the season has been monitored by the Hurricane Center. Now, yesterday it was out over the water, and it had a low 10% chance at forming. Now it's inland. It's done. It's not going to form. But you go back and look at this last night as it made landfall or came ashore on the Florida-Georgia line. You can make an argument this might have been a brief tropical storm. It made a run for it right at the end. So what the Hurricane Center will do is go back after the season, do what's called a postseason analysis, and decide, was this a tropical storm that snuck in? And if they did, it wouldn't have a name. It would be a no-name storm. So it's not Alex. Alex is still on the board. All right, so there goes the heavy rain that it's dragging up into the southeast.
CBS 4 is dedicated to helping you get ready in case we are ever in the path of a hurricane.
Throughout our newscast, we'll break down today's NOAA hurricane outlook and things you can do to prepare and how much it'll cost you to buy what you need to prepare for a hurricane.
Right now, let's begin with a closer look at the report. For that, we're checking in with our meteorologist, Dave Warren. Dave.
Yes, they predicted a range here, and that range for named storms is 14 to 21, 14 being average, 6 to 10 hurricanes, 7 being average, and 3 to 6 major hurricanes. 3 is average. It could be another season there where we exhaust the names if we do hit 21, just like last year. 21 named storms, 7 hurricanes, and 4 major hurricanes. Continuing to see this La Nina in the Pacific continuing. There was thoughts that it may try to work its way back to neutral, but that does not look like it's occurring now. And what that means for wind in the Atlantic from the Pacific is you have less wind shear, and the atmosphere is a little more unstable. So this can lead to above average hurricane seasons again in that main development area. Here is where we are watching, at least for the start of the season. Typically, this is where the storms are likely to develop here in the Gulf, in parts of the Caribbean, and off the East Coast, not in that main development area yet. The good news is over that area, things are pretty quiet here for at least over the next 5 days. So tropical weather outlooks coming in, not much developing here, but still now is the time to prepare. The numbers coming in, and it looks like it is an above average season here. Of course, I'll take you through the rest of the week. We have Memorial Day weekend. I'll look at our local weather with the complete forecast. That's when I come back a little bit later.
My head for the rest of the month.
6 million people lost power. Grocery stores were forced to close with food rotting on their shelves. Gas stations had no power for people to get gas. Tempers flared at the pump and water and ice distribution sites.
You've been waiting in line for 5 hours and you see somebody just walk in front of you. How are you going to feel?
I started, God, please, God, I scream. It's good, God, please, no, don't kill me, God, don't kill me, please.
And it has been 30 years since Hurricane Andrew's 175-mile-per-hour winds leveled much of South Miami-Dade County.
There's nothing left. There's no more homestead. I don't think there's a building I've seen that hasn't been destroyed.
In the days and weeks after the storm, there was no food, no water, and no place to stay.
A lot of dreams to this, all gone, overnight, just in 2 hours.
Words can't explain it. You have to go through it yourself.
It's these kinds of struggles we all want to avoid as we start another hurricane season.
Just because it hasn't happened in a while doesn't mean it can't happen this next year, so we gotta prepare just like we do every year.
National Hurricane Center Director Ken Graham says forecasts are getting better every year, but he cautions people from just looking at the cone of concern when making their plans.
Little wiggles matter. You have to realize every storm is so different. Don't compare storms. They're all completely different.
And Graham says an interesting fact about the major hurricanes, they may not give you as much warning.
The most powerful storms, there's only been 9 on record that have made landfall 150 miles per hour or greater. In the last 100 years, they were all tropical storms or less 3 days out. So they're fast, because in some cases you may only get 3 days notice. That's not the exception, that's the rule with the strongest storms.
All right, that's a look at the severe weather. Tropical season, though, getting underway. It's already underway in the Eastern Pacific, Jim.
Yeah, it is. A pretty high chance that we will see a disturbance work its way close to the Mexican coast as we work our way through the next 5 days. As a matter of fact, it'll probably get a name. If it's named, it will be Agatha. So for the first time in several years, actually, I think the Pacific may actually have a heads up on us, and we may not get a storm named before June 1st in the Atlantic Basin. And that hasn't happened in 5 years, since 2014, as a matter of fact. So let's talk about Invest 91E a little bit, all right? You can see if we kind of streamline this. In other words, what are the winds like? You can see where the circulation center is. There is some convection down here. Big Shear is well removed from it. That's all up to the north. So this thing really just needs to get itself together to organize, and we do think it will. What happens sometimes here at the Gulf of Tehuantepec, this is such a low area that the winds accelerate through that, and they actually help to ramp up these systems. And the models just go nuts with this once it goes. I mean, they bring it up to a hurricane, so it wouldn't surprise me, just kind of given where it is and the lack of shear and everything else it's got going for it. But then the question goes, where does it go? All right, let's say as we get into the later part of the weekend, we get something that's named here. Does it go all the way west toward Acapulco? That's a possibility, and that's going to be next week, all right? Does it quickly scoot more closer to the Gulf of Tehuantepec? I think those are still reasonable options at this time, because until we get the entity, it makes the models a little less believable. But we do believe that the entity, wherever it develops, is going to make its way, at least in some way, shape, or form, back toward Mexico, and maybe some of that DNA getting into the Western Caribbean or the Bay of Campeche. Where it goes from there and what it becomes is anyone's guess at this point, because if it's here versus here, it could go in a whole different direction. All right, there's going to be different steering in both those areas. But you can see, if you just look at the European operational from last night, that it does kind of take this DNA back into this region by the time we get to next weekend. So the takeaway for you guys is we're watching this, we're watching the DNA with it once it moves across, and the models are showing something to watch, but it's next weekend. So we have plenty of time to watch it.
It's a holiday weekend, so our eyes are on the weekend, of course, and we've got a little bit of everything going on.
And the eyes of the Weather Authority on the tropics. Jordan, already?
Yeah, in fact, the last 7 years, we've had pre-season storms. So far, we have not, but in the Pacific, we do have our first depression of the season. This is Tropical Depression 1E off in the Eastern Pacific. Now, we are talking about this because of what's going on with the cone of concern. Notice we could be saying hello to Agatha in the Pacific as early as tomorrow, possibly becoming a Category 1 hurricane before making landfall over Central America. Now, it's what happens early next week. Notice how it's trying to make its way near the Bay of Campeche. Our models are hinting at some remnants of this area of low pressure trying to make its way into the southern Gulf of Mexico, and our models are keeping that area of low pressure around that Yucatan Peninsula. So we're going to be keeping our eyes on this area for the week to come, just to keep our eyes on this and make sure we know what's going on. So be sure to keep it tuned to Local 10 to see what's going on with the tropics as we head towards next week. As you know, we do have our new hurricane specialist, Michael Lowry, to be talking next week.
We are expecting an increase in rain and thunderstorms. Changing topic, though, Hurricane season for the Pacific began on May 15th, and now they have their first named storm of the season. Tropical Storm Agatha right now with maximum sustained winds of 45 miles per hour. It's in the Pacific. It's moving towards the west, expected to take a turn towards the north, and expected forecast to make landfall in Mexico as a hurricane possibly early next week. Now, the only reason we're keeping a close eye on this is because the remnants of Agatha, if there are even any remnants, this would have to survive land interaction over Mexico. Fast forward into next week, and now the National Hurricane Center for the Atlantic is keeping a close eye on this area, because if Agatha and remnants hold together next week, then we could be looking at an area of low pressure possibly forming somewhere in the Gulf of Mexico. So we'll have to keep a close eye on Agatha, its whereabouts, as we head into next week. Right now, the National Hurricane Center is giving this area a low development chance to the next 2 to 5 days.
But for the most part, most of the activity should begin to dwindle down when we lose some of that daytime heating after 8 p.m. But let's take things over out towards the tropics. We're watching the first named storm of the Pacific season, Atlantic hurricane season. Whole new list of storms, but this is Agatha. Is expected to rapidly intensify between now into Sunday into a Category 2 hurricane before making landfall in the southern portions of Mexico. It's going to work its way over land, weakening down to a depression, and then the remnants of the storm could redevelop once again in the Atlantic waters. So we're looking at the Bay of Campeche being a hot zone for the potential for the storm to get itself together once again. So let me take you through the GFS American model. Again, takes it as a hurricane over land, and then we see a weakening quite a bit. And then this is the area of interest noted by the National Hurricane Center. They're giving it about a 20% chance to be monitored by the next couple of days. So it's still fairly low, but as we get closer into the midweek, as soon as we see how the system actually behaves over Mexico, then we'll have a better idea of where it's going to be heading potentially. A lot of the models do drift this off towards the east with an increase in moisture for us here in Florida, something we're going to be keeping an eye on over the next several days.
All right. So tropical moisture in play already here in Florida, but Dr. Postel, we have a hurricane, a strengthening hurricane approaching Mexico, and that could approach the Gulf of Mexico too.
Yes, remnants of it could, but first we have to deal with its potential impacts to Mexico. As you mentioned, it is a strengthening hurricane, 85 miles per hour on the wind speeds. These are satellite estimates, and not moving much. It's wobbling around at a couple of miles per hour, about 150 miles off the coast. So it's going to remain over water for the next 24 hours at least, maybe more, and that will give it an opportunity to strengthen quite a bit. So we have to be very careful with that. Hurricane warnings and tropical storm warnings are posted for parts of the Mexican coastline. And on the satellite pictures, I don't like the look of what I see. There is a well-defined cloud pattern here, and I'm trying to get some data underneath that, looking at some of the different frequencies, and to see if indeed there is an eye wall or some kind of a circulation that's well-defined in the middle of it. It's not clear yet, but this certainly has the hallmarks of a system that is rapidly intensifying and will continue to do so over water. The oceanic conditions are going to be supportive of that. This is the oceanic heat content, which is not just a measure of the surface temperature of the water. It's also a measure of the depth of it, too. So the more of the combination of the two, the warmth and the depth, the more fuel for the thunderstorms, and the less likely this will be able to churn up cooler waters as it's not moving very much, which might happen over some locations in maritime regions. But here, the depth of the water is significant, so the fact that it's stationary shouldn't really hold it back a whole lot. Atmospherically, we also have not much wind shear and a very moist atmosphere. So the atmosphere is saying, go ahead, do it. The ocean is allowing it to do so. So really, we are in a position to see Agatha strengthen even more and potentially a lot more. The official Hurricane Center forecast has it getting up to 110 miles per hour before making landfall, we think, maybe late tomorrow night or early Tuesday, and then slowing down perhaps and crossing over mountainous terrain over Mexico. That's a problem, because that could unload even more rain than it would otherwise bring with the additional upslope flow that you can get with these tropical cyclones moving in mountainous regions. So here's the problem for not just Mexico, but for many of us down the line thinking about what's going to happen to Agatha. It will likely dissipate crossing Mexico, bringing life-threatening flooding and mudslides. And then there's a shot that some of the remnants move back out over the southern Gulf of Mexico, perhaps, or even maybe the Caribbean. And those remnants have some chance of redeveloping into a tropical cyclone. Now, if Agatha dissipates completely and loses all of its tropical characteristics and is no longer a depression, whatever happens here has to be watched carefully, because if it gets a name, it would be a new name, and that would be Alex. Something to watch down the road. I'll be right back.
We want to talk about the tropics because if you haven't heard, we've got Hurricane Agatha, which has been upgraded from a tropical storm to a hurricane as it swirls in the eastern Pacific off the coast of Mexico. You're looking live at Acapulco, where things are still fairly quiet right now. Waves should increase in the next 24 hours as a powerful hurricane continues to push towards the coast. This could be a very devastating storm, especially along the Mexican coastline. It's a rather compact storm, but man, it has intensified very quickly over the last 24 hours and expected to continue to strengthen. Right now, the latest advisory as of 7 p.m. Central Daylight Time, keeping this as a strong Category 2, winds at 110 miles per hour, pressure down to 964 millibars and moving now a little bit faster off towards the northeast at 5 miles per hour. Still very slow moving, expected to make landfall as we head into early on Tuesday and notice potentially as a major hurricane. Beyond that, weakening rather quickly, but what does it do as it comes into the Gulf of Mexico and the Bay of Campeche? Will it re-intensify and re-spin into something more organized? Models are hinting at that possibility. Either way, southern parts of Mexico, heads up, hurricane warnings in effect.
And we're on the storm watch on this Memorial Day. A lot of folks off today for the holiday. So Lisette, what can they expect?
Oh, well, already I'm tracking the rain and also flood advisory in Miami-Dade. But as we take a look at the tropics, I wanted to elaborate a little bit more on Hurricane Agatha, because this is something that could really lead to a disastrous start to the Pacific hurricane season for folks here in Mexico. And not only that, we're going to have to watch what happens with the remnants of Agatha once it does cross over Mexico, because there's also an area that we're closely monitoring here, and this is an area of low pressure which the Hurricane Center is giving a 30% chance of developing.
Tropics. It is Eastern Pacific hurricane season, and on cue we've got our first hurricane. You're looking at video out of Oaxaca, where we've got the wind that has been on the increase today and through this afternoon and evening. That's when the hurricane force winds will be moving through. In addition to wind, of course, rain. You can see the windshield wipers working overtime and moving through some of these communities. Wind damage, storm surge flooding potential is there. In addition, that wave action is going to be very, very strong. So large waves and then rain-induced flooding, especially into some of these areas where we've got the terrain across sections of southern Mexico. We could be looking at landslides and mudslides as well. So there is Hurricane Agatha. Notice an area to watch in parts of the Atlantic side of the basin, and that is going to be as a result of Hurricane Agatha and the storm's remnants, which cross the peninsula over into the Gulf of Mexico. 105-mile-per-hour hurricane right now. It's a Cat 2 making its way inland. So again, the worst of the weather through the remainder of today. This afternoon, this evening, expect those hurricane force winds, the storm surge flooding, and of course the rain will persist over the coming days. Monday into Tuesday evening, you can see that northeastward movement of this storm weakening as it does so, but the remnants get over into parts of the southern Gulf of Mexico. Could that trigger new development? It could. Area to watch right now, 40% chance of development here for the southern Gulf, western parts of the Caribbean. This would be where we would watch for the remnants of Agatha to offer up a new area of development, our 5-day development area west of Cuba, south of Cuba. And Chris, if it is remnants of Agatha, it would be Alex if we got something and we needed to name it. If Agatha's circulation remains, it would retain the name.
Which is looking doubtful just because it's so mountainous. It's going to be very difficult for it to do so. Yeah.
Así comenzamos. ¿Qué tal? Muy buenas tardes. Les saludan Alejandra Molina y Gloria Ordaz. Gracias por acompañarnos. Comenzamos este lunes de Memorial Day hablando de las condiciones del tiempo que han causado estragos este fin de semana feriado. Descargas eléctricas, amenaza de inundaciones y mucha lluvia. Vamos a pasar ahora con Jennifer Guerra con el pronóstico.
Alejandra,
Alejandra y Gloria, efectivamente hemos estado viendo este patrón de lluvias desde el día sábado, sobre todo ayer, con acumulados que estuvieron muy por encima de lo normal para esta época del año. Y aquí algunos de los números entre ayer y hoy, lo que hemos estado viendo en el área de Hialeah. Ha llovido mucho ayer con reportes de inundaciones y avisos por inundaciones repentinas, más de 4 pulgadas. Esta ha sido la tendencia, entre 2 pulgadas, observen en el condado Broward, en particular en el área de Fort Lauderdale, hasta Hollywood, 3 pulgadas y 9. Eso significa que todavía vamos a estar teniendo un suelo muy saturado de toda esta lluvia. La que esté cayendo pudiera nuevamente acumularse, y por eso la probabilidad de estas inundaciones continúa siempre y cuando continuamos teniendo esta lluvia llegando. Y es precisamente lo que hemos estado viendo durante las horas de esta tarde. Observen nuestro radar cómo detecta, aunque en el momento no estamos viendo esas marcas, digamos, en rojo y amarillo, indica donde la lluvia es más fuerte. Ahora mismo estamos viendo sobre el área de Miami-Dade lluvia mayormente ligera, aunque para el área de los Cayos, Cayo Maratón, Cayo Largo, estaríamos viendo esa lluvia más intensa. Lo importante acá es resaltar que durante las próximas horas todavía pudiéramos ver esa permanencia de precipitaciones, y todo debido a que tenemos disturbios y también un ambiente inestable. Atención, de eso hablamos más adelante.
Hola, ¿qué tal? Feliz tarde, los saluda Silvana del Mar. Comenzamos con toda la información del tráfico, viendo las excelentes condiciones que priman en la mayoría de las autopistas aquí al sur de la Florida. Y es que definitivamente se nota que es un día feriado, que también el tiempo ha causado estragos y que la mayoría de la gente debe estar guardadita en casita, porque vean ustedes mismos ahora la I-95 a la altura de la calle 79 del noroeste. Hacia el sur, un patrón bastante normal, pero quiero que se fijen en los carriles que se dirigen hacia el norte, muy poco flujo vehicular. Así que si usted está pensando salir de casita en los próximos minutos, hágalo y disfrute de las excelentes condiciones. Vamos a pasar ahora hasta nuestros mapas, porque sí quiero contarles que hay un cierre por agua justamente sobre la 95 en esos carriles que se dirigen hacia el norte a la altura de la I-195. Tenga en cuenta que el carril de la izquierda se encuentra totalmente cerrado justamente por acumulación de agua. Y de aquí nos vamos a ir directito hasta la calle 8, porque en esos carriles que se dirigen hacia el oeste a la altura de la avenida 27 del suroeste se reporta un primer accidente con condiciones menores, lo que quiere decir que no hay bloqueos de calles ni tampoco se reportan demoras, porque como ya les he venido mencionando, hay muy poco flujo vehicular aquí en las carreteras al sur de la Florida. Vuelvo más adelante con un nuevo reporte del tráfico.
Ya ha iniciado la temporada ciclónica justo en la cuenca del Pacífico Oriental, y desde muy cerquita en México justo nos llegan estas imágenes donde desde esta mañana ya se preparaban y ultimaban los preparativos ante el impacto del huracán Agatha. Los residentes de la zona, como pueden ver, estaban moviendo sus botes de tierra hacia adentro, aseguraron estructuras débiles. Las autoridades realmente advirtieron que las lluvias pudieran aumentar los niveles de ríos, arroyos, ocasionar también deslaves, inundaciones, sobre todo en las localidades bajas, y es que debían hacerlo porque Agatha acaba de tocar tierra justo cerca de lo que es el área de Puerto Ángel en México. Esta situación fue justo hace apenas unos momentos. Acabamos de recibir ese reporte. El huracán Agatha como categoría 2, vientos máximos sostenidos de 105 millas por hora desde ya, según los registros, el huracán más fuerte en tocar territorio mexicano en el mes de mayo, sobre todo en la parte de la costa del Pacífico. ¿Cómo estaría influyendo Agatha en el tiempo entonces en el Caribe? Pues todo está relacionado a una nueva perturbación que pudiera estarse creando justamente en este sector, en el sector del Golfo de México Sur y también hacia el Mar Caribe Occidental. El Centro Nacional de Huracanes le otorga un 40% de probabilidad de formación ciclónica para los próximos 5 días. Los remanentes de Agatha pudieran crear un poco más de ambiente favorable para que esto pudiera concretarse. Habrá que esperar un poquito más para ver realmente cuál sería el futuro desarrollo de este centro de bajas presiones.
Tower cam, and things not looking so good over the Magic City. It was, you can't even see the Magic City in this shot.
What are we looking at?
I would say the rain is definitely coming down, Eden.
Oh, yes, it is. And Luke, you told us about some of the scattered thunderstorms that you were keeping an eye on.
Yeah, it's mainly central southern Dade and the Upper Keys is where it's been. But, you know, we're not talking severe thunderstorm warnings and flash flood warnings like we were yesterday, where it was just a mess. All right, here's the view from Miami and from Brickell. All right, 76 degrees there, 80 in Fort Lauderdale, 80 in Key West. Look at that rain-cooled air. not bad to have on a day like this. Southeast breeze at 6. Hey, let's switch gears. We're going to go over to the Pacific side where Hurricane Agatha has made landfall. Now, the Pacific, their hurricane season starts May 15th, but they started with a bang with this powerful hurricane, made landfall as a Cat 2 with winds to 105 miles per hour. That makes this Mexico's strongest May hurricane on record as it came ashore and is still coming ashore on the southern coast of Mexico. It's going to cross over Mexico, likely dissipate or weaken significantly, but get kind of absorbed in this just area of disturbed weather. It's all over the Yucatan, the Western Caribbean. And in this zone, later this week, Wednesday through Friday-ish, there's a chance that a disturbance could form on the Atlantic side. So Hurricane Center gives it 40% chance, medium odds. We're going to be watching that throughout the week. So just be checking in and we'll see what tries to form in that region.
We get to Wednesday, rain chances go down a little bit, Thursday down a little bit, and then we start to turn our attention to what's happening down here. The remnants of Agatha. Agatha, now a tropical storm, was a hurricane when it made landfall earlier today. Now starting to fall apart. It's likely it will fall completely apart, but its remnants will make their way up into the Gulf of Mexico potentially, or over into the Western Caribbean, over the Yucatan Peninsula. Either way, we could see some redevelopment as we get into the middle of this week. Hurricane Center giving it a 50% chance that that will happen this week. Computer models are all over the place, some moving toward the west coast of Florida, some south of Florida, some back over to Texas and Mexico. We're going to have to wait and see over the next couple of days what the remnants end up doing, and then we'll know a lot more. But here's the American model called the GFS. It shows the remnants of Agatha moving over the Yucatan Peninsula and then up over Cuba, and then just south and southeast of us as we get into Friday and Saturday, which could give us a boost in rainfall as we head into this weekend. So that's what we're watching for right now. Tomorrow, a 40% chance for showers and thunderstorms along the coast in the morning, then inland in the afternoon, 30% Wednesday, Thursday, and that potential boost in rainfall Friday and Saturday as the remnants of Agatha move closer to Florida. If that happens, we're going to keep a close eye on it the next couple of days, and we'll know a lot more if those remnants move back out over open water. Let's look at your first warning forecast.
¿Cómo están, amigos de Telemundo 51? Buenos días, vamos a seguir con más de esta primera edición.
Vamos a hacer esta última media hora de noticias. Comenzamos vigilando ese trópico. A ver cómo se encuentra con Dainés Sierra. Háblanos un poquito más.
Irene, Fernando, muy buenos días para ustedes, también para los amigos de Telemundo 51, y justo un recordatorio de que estamos a tan solo un día de comenzar de forma oficial la temporada para la cuenca del Atlántico Norte, así que estaremos vigilando el trópico como es costumbre hasta el 30 de noviembre. Ahora mismo tenemos justo a Agatha, que sigue siendo por el momento una tormenta tropical con vientos máximos sostenidos de 45 millas por hora. Recuerden que tocó tierra en la tarde de ayer justo en Oaxaca como un huracán categoría 2 y se espera de hecho que el sistema siga debilitándose mientras sigue interactuando con territorio mexicano, pero va a seguir dejando intensas lluvias sobre sectores de México con acumulados que justo en el mismo estado de Oaxaca pudieran alcanzar hasta 16 pulgadas de lluvia. Nosotros estaremos monitoreando bien de cerca los restos de ese sistema porque pudiera ayudar a que una zona de baja presión se esté formando justo sobre la península de Yucatán en el próximo par de días, y esa zona de baja presión pudiera encontrar un ambiente un poco favorable para organizarse mejor, y es por eso que en 5 días el Centro Nacional de Huracanes le atribuye un 60% de posibilidad de formación ciclónica justo en este sector que tengo representado en este color naranja. Lo que nosotros sabemos aquí en el sur de la Florida es que va a seguir llegando abundante humedad a la región, como pueden ver representado en ese color verde, así que la lluvia va a seguir garantizada por los próximos días y sobre todo otra vez de cara al fin de semana, así que por supuesto seguiremos vigilando el potencial de inundaciones.
Now, Hurricane Agatha plowed into Mexico's southern Pacific coast yesterday, hitting a Category 2 storm. Agatha has sustained winds of 105 miles per hour as it made landfall, and a weekend as it moved inland. Agatha is expected to dump about 20 inches of rain in some areas. And now here's Michael Ehrenberg, who's tracking the tropics for us.
Yeah, that's right, Lily. We are tracking, actually, the remnants of Agatha, actually located here in Mexico. A lot of upper-level wind shear, so the shower and thunderstorm activity associated with this is blowing all the way across the Yucatan into the southern Gulf and the northwestern Caribbean Sea. Another leg of it also down to the south. Now, this is weakened down to just a disturbance, but nevertheless, when the remnants of Agatha get into this area in the Gulf in the next few days, in the next 2 days, there's a 30% chance it becomes a depression and a 70% chance in the next 5 days as it heads somewhere towards the Sunshine State. Now, this is typically one of the areas that we see development in early June. June starts on Wednesday, so we do need to watch the system very carefully. You notice those arrows show that some of these systems do head towards the state of Florida. The models, though, are in wide disagreement, our global models. Here's a look at the European forecast, which presents a much wetter, windier scenario for us. By Friday afternoon, it's got the storm system near the Yucatan. And then by Saturday morning, notice we've got a landfall of perhaps a weak tropical depression, at most a weak tropical storm, somewhere near the west coast of Florida, Fort Myers, Tampa area. Notice the yellow and orange, steady, heavy rain Friday night into Saturday night, with whatever broad circulation is left moving like in this direction off of central Florida coast later Saturday night and earlier Sunday. GFS model still very, very different, showing a weaker system moving much further to the south, making landfall, if it is a closed circulation, near the Keys and then down towards Nassau on the Bahamas. And we're just on the northwestern edge of the rain shield. So as you'd imagine, wide disparities in how much rainfall we get. If the European model, which keeps us on the wetter side, is the correct scenario, we'd be looking at over 3.5 inches of rain across our area between now and Saturday night. If the GFS model is correct, an inch in West Palm, 1/4 of an inch in Vero Beach. So a little bit of uncertainty. The bottom line is we're going to get some wind and rain from it. So at this point in time, what we can expect is impacts to begin in our area on Friday with some occasional showers and storms, locally heavy downpours. We're rainy and windy Friday night into Saturday. How much rain we get and how much wind we get depends, again, on what track that system takes.
NBC6 News at Noon starts now.
All right, we have been counting down to today, but Floridians, you already know it is the official start to hurricane season.
With an above-average hurricane season forecasted, officials are encouraging residents to prepare for the season now.
That's what we've been telling you about it. The tropics already fired up. We are keeping an eye on the Gulf of Mexico, where remnants from Agatha could impact us right here in South Florida.
I know, a named storm already. Meteorologist Angie Lassman is here. She kicks off her team coverage on what we can expect. Angie.
Ladies, there's a couple things that I want you to know. We don't have all the answers as far as how this will progress and what exactly it will do to us, but we have a general idea of the impacts that we'll see and the timing that we'll see those impacts here as we get through the next couple of days. Let's start with that tropical outlook, because we've seen those numbers increasing over the past 24 to 48 hours. You can see exactly what's going on. There is one area just to the east of Florida that we're monitoring, but the one that we want to pay close attention to is the area near the Yucatan Peninsula. It's basically a bunch of unorganized showers and thunderstorms near a broad area of low pressure, and over the next 5 days or so, we'll likely see that become what could be a tropical depression, possibly down the line a tropical storm. What does it mean for us? It means the main impact is going to be some gusty winds, but also some heavy rainfall. So let's talk about our different models and what they're doing as far as our amounts of precipitation we could receive into Friday and into Saturday. Those are the two kind of bullseyes for the rain chances that we'll see. As we get through the next couple of days, you can see going through Friday, Saturday, this is the European model. It kind of takes the center of this into the center of the state of Florida. When it comes to the GFS model, it takes it a little farther to the south. Either way, we could be talking about anywhere from 3 to 7 inches of rain. That's something we'll keep an eye on. Now, switching gears, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Association held a news conference highlighting the beginning of hurricane season. Here's some of what was said.
Looking at 14 to 21 named storms coming up. So another season that'll approach the limits of the names that we have. So that's what we're looking at for this season. We're looking at the potential to have even 3 to 6 major hurricanes, up to 10 hurricanes. So busy season once again.
The director of the National Hurricane Center emphasized although Florida didn't see much activity last year or years before, you can't go into the season comparing storms thinking Florida can't be affected. And of course, make sure you are prepared before the storms are approaching, whether it's gathering supplies or making sure your home is protected.
Watch the bottom of your screen. That is the leading edge of a system that could very well eventually become Alex. We think it could be a tropical depression, at least over us. And with more on that, want to send it over to John Morales, our hurricane specialist, with more on that. Hey, John, so great to have you back. I know this is going to be a wet weekend, we think, or at least a wet Friday and Saturday.
Definitely, Steve. And the rain is the biggest concern here from this disturbance, which, you know, is still getting its act together. Remember, this is the remnant of Hurricane Agatha, a Category 2 hurricane that struck Oaxaca in Mexico and then crossed Mexico, lost all of its tropical characteristics. But now that it's reemerging off of Mexico, here's the Yucatan Peninsula here, you see that it's starting to acquire, you know, that look again, that it could be ramping up to possibly become a tropical depression or storm. But there is no concern really that this is going to be a strong system. It will probably be a low-end tropical storm, yes, to be named Alex, or maybe a tropical depression. There's upper-level wind shear. You can see it here in the cirrus clouds moving across the southern Gulf of Mexico at a pretty good clip from west to east. You know, that indicates to you that the winds aloft are strong. 25 to 50 miles per hour should keep this from becoming too strong of a system. Now, that means that the windstorm aspect of it is not that big of a concern. Yes, there might be a gust to tropical storm force or two, but rainfall, that's the biggest concern. We'll be talking about how many inches of rain you can expect in a few minutes.
So let's talk more about this disturbance. I want to bring in our hurricane specialist and storm surge expert, Michael Lowry. And Michael, at this point tonight, the system's still not looking very impressive in terms of organization.
It's not, Betty. Yeah, this still has some time to cook. Let's take a look at the satellite picture. This is the infrared picture, all of those red and yellow cloud tops signifying where the strongest storms, the deepest convection is. It is a very messy situation down here in the Western Caribbean and the southern Gulf of Mexico. If there is a low pressure area, it's somewhere over here, and you can see there aren't a lot of those red and oranges over here. That tells me that it's still feeling the effects of detrimental wind shear, which is keeping the storms from organizing. Let's talk about where this is headed in the steering flow. At the upper part of the atmosphere, we have a dip in the jet stream. This is about 30,000 feet up. The good news for us in terms of where this is that jet stream dip and the winds at the top part of the atmosphere. That is going to keep this in check. Don't anticipate this is going to be much more than a tropical depression, maybe a low-grade tropical storm. So as we get into tomorrow, we'll start to see more organization with that low-pressure center. We'll see the more of a circular pattern to the winds. And then as we get into Friday, we think that this will more than likely be a tropical depression, maybe tropical storm Alex at this point. But look, that jet stream is staying with it. So that should keep this lopsided and on the weaker end. But nevertheless, as Betty was saying, to the east and south of where this comes ashore, there is going to be a lot of precipitation, a lot of moisture, and we're looking at some pretty big potential rain totals here across South Florida, upwards of 10 inches, and that could be a problem in terms of that localized flooding and urban flooding. Thankfully, though, it looks like by Sunday, the weather should be clearing up.
This is 7 News at Noon.
Off the top here at noon, we are watching a disturbance that could develop into the season's first tropical depression.
Whatever ends up coming our way, we can expect a whole lot of rain. Now is the time to take measures to protect your home. Parts of Florida could be under watches or warnings as soon as this afternoon.
Flooding is a major concern. Of course, meteorologist Vivian Gonzalez live in the Weather Center with all the details for us. Viv?
And that's right, Ethan. Vanessa, South Florida, thank you so much for joining us. We're following a tropical disturbance located between the Yucatan and Caribbean Sea. It is producing a lot of cloudiness, shower and thunderstorm activity popping up on the eastern side of this disturbance. So there are signs of organization, and the Hurricane Center is maintaining a high chance, 80%, that it could develop into a depression or storm over the next 48 hours. A recon plane will be going out there this afternoon to investigate this area. And here are some preliminary model runs. High pressure to the southeast. We have a front to the northwest, and it shows this disturbance moving in our general direction. And they're actually coming into better agreement on that scenario. Just exactly how strong and it will be, that's yet to be determined, but we know it'll be a significant rain event for parts of South Florida. And starting tomorrow, we're going to see that moisture moving in and relentless rounds of heavy rain. So regardless of development, we will be on the worst side, the wettest side of this system. And this is where we're going to be looking at the potential of seeing an isolated tornado or two. Also, marine and surf conditions will be on the rough side, but tropical storm watches, warnings, even a flood watch is pending for parts of South Florida. I'll be back with a whole lot more in a couple of minutes.
Yeah, hey, at least we didn't have a preseason A storm this year. We got close, but yeah, here we are early June, and they typically form on our doorstep near the Caribbean and come north.
And that's exactly what we're watching this weekend at the very best, just shaping out to be an absolute washout for portions of South Florida and the Keys, at least the end of the weekend, start of the weekend. Potential for very heavy rain that's expected to come down in a short period of time. So while we need rain in some of these areas, the flash flood threat is going to be worsened by the amount and the time in which that heavy rain falls. So want to get you the very latest, caught up on everything Invest 91L and what it could mean for your weekend. Dr. Nab, take it away.
Yeah, so we've got an area of low pressure that is still tangling a bit with the Yucatan Peninsula, but despite that and the wind shear in the atmosphere that's making it a lopsided system, as these developing early season systems tend to be, still very likely to become a depression or storm. That whole 90% chance is in the next 2 days. So could be today, could be tonight, could be tomorrow. And so this is essentially a 2-day development area as it moves northeastward. So it's going to be steered and sheared by this upper level trough that is off to its west, right in here. And that is a main reason why it's so lopsided. It will be lopsided throughout essentially its entire stay in the Gulf, Caribbean, Florida region. And so that means where the center eventually takes shape is of a lot less consequence. Where the rain falls is going to be the big issue. Now, so you see the model depiction on the isobars here, generally showing the area of low pressure centered over the northeastern Yucatan Peninsula and all the weather over the Yucatan Channel and over western portions of Cuba. Here's the Florida Keys starting to get into the cloudiness and showers, but right in here you can see the swirl and the low-level clouds over northeast Yucatan near Cancun. That's where the area of low pressure generally appears to be centered. And if we look at the surface observations on top of this, you can actually pick out the low-level swirl with the different directions of the winds at Cancun and Cozumel. Merida, it's out of the north, and our buoy out over the northwest Caribbean's out of the south. So that is a pretty good indication of where the low pressure area is centered. But with these lopsided systems, when they're sheared, things can reform down shear in the convection. So we'll have to watch and see what the aircraft recon finds out in this zone. But it's an interesting recon flight, right? Because they're in the air right now, and they're going to be coming in from the north. And so they're probably going to encounter all their wind data showing that the center of circulation is right near the coastline. So this is an Air Force C-130 coming right near Progreso and Merida, Mexico right now. And what they're going to do is basically fly around in here and telegraph where that low-level center is. It'll be interesting to see if they find it where the satellite says it is. But in any case, we're going to spend a lot of time talking about what kind of system it is, where the center is, all that stuff, but really it's about where the impacts are headed. And the low-level spin shown by the colors here shows that system generally moving northeastward and getting over Florida on Saturday, but the weather will get worse tomorrow. Okay, so this is not just about where the low-level spin is going to be. In any case, the GFS takes it farther to the south in between North Carolina and Bermuda on Monday and into Tuesday. The Euro still continues to be showing a fairly disorganized broad system into tomorrow and even Saturday, but taking a little bit more northerly trek before going between North Carolina and Bermuda. And so the key here is going to be, look at how lopsided this is. That weather is going to be ahead of the game, and then the Euro takes it close enough to the East Coast, Alex, that we're going to see some impacts there. But the key is going to be that we're going to have a lopsided system that's going to be rain-induced. And they could start advisories at any time, even if the recon doesn't find that it's a depression yet.
Right.
Because if they want to put up a tropical storm watch for Cuba or Florida, they can do that with potential tropical cyclone advisories.
Yeah, now we have that option where if we think the impacts could get us into that threshold, we can pull the trigger earlier. Dr. Knapp, thanks.
Now, because so much rain has come down over the last few days across South Florida, any additional rainfall will surely lead to some street flooding. Because of that, now they have implemented a street flood advisory for the Sawgrass Expressway, I-75 impacting Sunrise, Davie, and Weston until 5:45 this afternoon. And because the potential is there for some very gusty winds, possibly 30 to 40 miles per hour plus, this area here from Pembroke Pines to Coral Springs back south and through Weston is under a significant weather advisory once again for the potential of those strong winds. So that's part of this eastern end of this broad area of low pressure pushing some showers our way. For the time being, most of the rain is on the eastern half. Some very strong upper level winds are keeping it in check, and that's something that we are watching. Now, the system has a chance to become a depression or a tropical storm at any time now, somewhere in this area highlighted in red. We do have an Air Force Hurricane Hunter checking the system out right now. I believe that we finally have one reading that has come in, and as you can see, 43 miles per hour on the dry side. The folks at the National Hurricane Center are going to gather all this information. They're actually looking to see if there's a spin here, and if they do find a spin, it'll probably get classified. Here's what the spaghetti models are showing. Some of them just keep it here for a little while, and then they pick it up and take it right across South Florida. That means a good chance of rain for us Friday and Saturday. I'll have a lot more on this a little bit later on.
Local 10 News starts right now.
Off the top at 5, a deluge drenching South Florida. On this Thursday, this video coming to us from South Beach. Look at that rain coming down.
And you hear that ominous thunder and heavy rains also slamming Broward County. This video is from Sunrise.
And we are now under a flood watch right now. Here's a live look at the Local 10 radar at the moment.
And here's what's coming up next. The National Hurricane Center now calling this disturbance Potential Tropical Cyclone One as it moves off the Yucatan Peninsula into the southern Caribbean, headed for South Florida.
We've got a lot to talk about in the weather department.
So let's get right to Local 10, your weather team, hurricane specialist and storm surge expert Michael Lowry and chief certified meteorologist Betty Davis. Betty, we're going to begin with you.
Hey guys, things are changing on us pretty quickly, but the story is still the same as far as what we're expecting here in South Florida. But yes, we now have Potential Tropical Cyclone One. So this system, this disturbance is forecast to become strengthened to a tropical storm. So right now it's still near the Yucatan Peninsula, but as I mentioned, as it moves northeastward, heads toward the southeastern Gulf this weekend, forecast to strengthen to a tropical storm. Lots of moisture going to be headed in our direction, and this means that we now have some tropical storm watches that are going up for our area, as well as a flood watch. We'll revisit that cone in just a second. I just want to stress that even though it's forecast to become a tropical storm, the story's still the same for us. Flooding rain is going to be the big takeaway here. So starting Friday, off and on tropical downpours through the day. Overnight Friday into Saturday, bands of heavy gusty rain moving across the area. And then by Saturday evening, we should start to trend drier. Cannot stress enough that the big takeaway from what this system brings our way will be all of the rainfall. We'll talk more about the amounts coming up here in just a minute. But in the meantime, check out the shades of green over us. That is the flood watch. in addition to the areas of Florida under a tropical storm watch. Let's bring in our hurricane specialist and storm surge expert, Michael Lowry, to talk a lot more about this potential tropical cyclone One and what that means. Michael?
Yeah, good afternoon, Betty. That's right. We often get excited when we see new forecasts coming in from the National Hurricane Center. In this case, though, as you said, the story really doesn't change for us. This is still really a rainmaker at the end of the day, and potentially a big rainmaker for South Florida as we move into tomorrow and Saturday. Here's the latest information on potential tropical cyclone One. We'll talk about why it's potential tropical cyclone, not why it's not tropical depression One. You can see winds at 35 miles per hour. Pressure is still pretty high at 1,003 millibars. Now, expecting this to be a tropical storm by the time it gets to our area on Saturday, or likely on Saturday morning. And talk about what the hurricane hunters have been finding this afternoon, flying down there for the last 3 hours or so. They're still finding a pretty broad area of low pressure, and that's why the Hurricane Center hasn't designated this as a tropical depression quite yet. You can see just in the last few frames, though, this is where the broad region of low pressure is, right on the tip of the Yucatan Peninsula. We are seeing some showers and thunderstorms starting to show up over where the center of circulation is. What's keeping this in check is a dip in the jet stream across the western Gulf of Mexico. You can see here to the left of it, a lot of dry air. To the right of it, here's where the broad area of spin is. But look at all of this deep, rich tropical moisture. As this moves off to the northeast, it's going to drag with it all of that heavy rainfall here. So hopefully by Sunday, things should be clearing out. Calvin and Eden, back to you.
I mean, look at the intensity that the National Hurricane Center is placing on this, a 40-mile-per-hour minimal tropical storm. The problem is that it's a lopsided storm. All the inclement weather with this is located on the right, to the right of its path. Here's an illustration of that. You're looking at the satellite radar composite here. So I'm combining satellite picture with radar as well, and I'm going to try to show you a couple of things here. First off, the rain that you're seeing across Cuba and the Florida Straits, this precipitation right here, that's what the weather radar can catch at this moment. But let me tell you, down here, it's pouring down there too, and that type of rain, as the system, which has its low pressure center way over here, as the system starts to move towards Florida, we're going to end up seeing not just this, we're going to end up seeing, you know, all of this, because this is going to move up towards us too. So it's going to end up being quite a wet storm, and more than anything, I am concerned about that, about the rainfall as it heads towards South Florida. Are there other risks? Sure there are. Maybe a stray gust or two to tropical storm force. There could be some isolated tornadoes as well. Some smaller pockets of power outages, not out of the question. But this is not a storm shutter type of storm, okay? This is a rainfall one. If you live in a rain flood area, you need to be aware that we've got a lot of rain coming, Trina.
Here's the latest on our tropical system right now, and it's still very disorganized. The center of circulation is close to Cancun, while all the weather is well out ahead of that. And so that's the way it's going to happen. As the center takes its sweet time coming up into Florida, the weather is going to already start to come in tomorrow. And here's a model depiction of that. It may not happen exactly like this, but it's going to be close. We expect the rain to start spreading across the Keys and coming up into South Florida, Miami-Dade County by tomorrow morning. That will be stepping up as we go through the day. Perhaps some really heavy rain moving into southwest Florida, Naples, Sanibel Island, Captiva, Fort Myers, Cape Coral, all those areas getting pounded by rain most likely tomorrow afternoon and into tomorrow evening. Also coming up through South Florida, where there's been a lot of rain in recent days and weeks. And so because the ground is saturated, that's going to raise the flash flood risk. And then notice the heavier rain in the east central part of the state Saturday morning, but some lingering storms here. And that's interesting because at that time on Saturday morning, there's going to be a lot of low-level wind shear, winds coming out of the east-southeast into parts of South Florida, while winds at 5,000 feet are coming out of the south and a lot more quickly. And so, Mark, in that environment with that low-level wind shear, we certainly could be talking about some tornadoes. It's entirely possible, very common with tropical systems, as you know.
Not common to see tropical tornadoes that look like this.
No.
Not even a little. In fact, it's not common to see any tornado that looks like this. Wow.
Yeah, that's just amazing. And so he did say that he actually looked up into the funnel. He said that that was not at this time. So I don't know. I guess this was post-tornado, maybe something like that?
I don't know. I think the tornado might be right here. You can actually see it walking across the screen right to left.
Back up a little
You
bit.
might have a better view at home than we do here. There's some glare and some stuff inside baseball. But I think that might be the whole mesocyclone underneath the parent supercell rotating around. And it connects. See, now that little white area is now all the way here and still moving on. Some of that may connect up towards that curl.
Yeah, it's hard. It's difficult to say, but you know, the motion on this thing is incredible. I mean, it's just amazing. Yeah, because normally when you see, you know, the bottom of the mesocyclone, there's a much slower motion occurring, but this is a very tight circulation. That's really something to see.
And then you've got the inflow or in this case outflow winds from the backside of the storm then blasting through as well.
Good morning, everybody. Hope you're off to a great start. Here is a look at potential tropical cyclone number 1. You're going, what is that? Well, likely Tropical Storm Alex as we hit here the next 12 hours or so. The Palm Beaches and the Treasure Coast now under a tropical storm warning. All this glob of red, that is heavy flooding potential rain that will douse us starting tonight and full force head on throughout the day on Saturday. Estimates 4 to 8 inches of rain on average here and up to about 12 in isolated spots. This afternoon, with that said, it's still a long distance away with 40-mile-an-hour winds, likely becoming Alex this afternoon. And then tomorrow, all that rain is really the heart of it over us. That right northeast quadrant of the tropics really is the worst with any sort of cyclone. So that's what we're going to get doused with. It moves offshore, though, rather quickly and is out of here by tomorrow night. So it's really just a 2-day event, really pretty much tonight and all day Saturday.
But speaking of our weather team, they're here now, and they're going to be they're following the very latest on a tropical storm watch that was just issued for our area. Sandra, what can you tell us about that?
It's been upgraded to a tropical storm warning for the entirety of our area, the Palm Beaches and the Treasure Coast. This is potential tropical cyclone number 1. That language from the National Hurricane Center, basically it means there's a 90% chance that this massive moisture organizes into Alex, a tropical storm. But ahead of that, even formation, we're seeing the downpours, and we're going to see heavy, heavy rains, anywhere from, say, 4 to 12 inches across the Palm Beaches and the Treasure Coast, mainly throughout Saturday. But we're going to see some deterioration tonight. Here's a look at a wide view of radar now, starting to already get that counterclockwise spiral, a sign that we have organization of a tropical storm in progress with some showers. Here's Vanette with more.
And Sandra, we are under that tropical storm warning that was just been issued for the Treasure Coast and the Palm Beaches. All across South Florida. They're under a tropical storm warning. That means conditions will be favorable for seeing some tropical storm conditions and winds in the next 48 hours, and also flash flooding starting today and tomorrow. We have all that tropical moisture right over Key West, all the way up towards Broward County. All that moisture over the Bahamas will be heading our way as well in the next couple of hours. Right now, we are tracking just moderate showers just east of Jupiter, parts of Riviera Beach, and a couple spotty showers not impacting your morning commute in Lake Worth and west of Boca Raton. Everywhere else looks just fine, just partly to mostly cloudy conditions out there. We are under a flood watch as well, so keep that in mind until Sunday afternoon, evening hours, all because of all that tropical moisture that will be producing a lot of rain. We're talking about anywhere between 4 to even 12 inches of rain locally, especially in Palm Beach County. Updated future track shows on and off showers in the morning, then becoming more widespread in the afternoon into the evening hours. Heavier rain bands near the Treasure Coast and some light showers down into Palm Beach County, and then more rain and even some thunderstorms on Saturday. So what to expect? Heavy tropical rain starting today and becoming widespread tomorrow on your Saturday morning. Localized flooding anywhere between 4 to even 12 inches of rain. Tropical winds, that's possible for those squall lines moving on shore. We're talking about wind gusts up to 40 to even 55 miles per hour occasionally. And quick tornadoes will be in the forecast. We'll have more details on this. Team coverage continues in the next 15 minutes.
Your storm station keeping an eye on this system is set to be a soaker.
Some people already planning and preparing, picking up sandbags.
Meantime, a live view of downtown Fort Lauderdale on this Friday morning. Get ready, South Florida. We are now under a tropical storm warning.
Meteorologist Vivian Gonzalez tracking what may become our first named storm of the season from the Weather Center. Good morning.
Good morning, Ethan. Vanessa, South Florida. All eyes on potential storm number 1. Hurricane hunters are out there gathering information, and they've determined that it is producing up to tropical storm force winds. And later today, it could actually become a full-fledged tropical storm by the name of Alex. And here's the latest satellite picture to show you that there's a lot of dry air and wind shear that's filtering in on the western side of the storm. So it's looking rather lopsided, where all of the cloud tops, shower and thunderstorm activity are displaced to the east. And that's exactly what's moving into parts of South Florida from the south to the north. 40-mile-per-hour winds. It's moving northeast at 6, located about 420 miles southwest of Fort Myers, Florida. And this is what a warning means, because the watch was upgraded to a tropical storm warning. And that means that over 39-mile-per-hour winds are likely in the warning area, and this is the time to finalize our preparation plans and be weather aware with your storm station. Based on the forecast track, it will make landfall around the west coast of Florida near Fort Myers Saturday afternoon, potentially with 45-mile-per-hour winds throughout the day Saturday, moving through the state, and then eventually Saturday night into early Sunday, moving into the Atlantic waters.
Not a bad way to start the day in Ormond Beach, Florida. You see the sun is coming up. It is a spectacular morning, a grand one, and it's hard to believe that what you see there, well, we share the same state of what we have in Key West, Florida. However, weather conditions could not be more apart. So same confines of the state, but entirely different universes when it comes in terms of the weather. Welcome back, everyone. I'm meteorologist Reynolds Wolf. I'm coming to you from Key West, Florida, home to roughly 26,000 people. But during the season, which is really year-round, you'll have people that are coming to visit. Today, it's just the opposite. People are trying to leave. They had plans on staying all the way through the weekend. Many of them altering that plans as we have another visitor, that being this tropical system, which continues its roll to the north, the northeast, bringing with it the wind and the rain. We're getting a break in the action. For those of you at home, you may be able to see those raindrops moving just diagonally across the screen, but we're seeing a break. The darker clouds, they have retreated or skedaddled away to the north, but we expect more of a buildup coming in around that center of circulation. And with it, we can expect some bigger waves that are going to come through. But the waves of rain could also be an issue, anywhere from 5 to 8 inches of precip, some spots maybe as much as 10, and that could cause some problems on your roadways. Now, in terms of the surge, we mentioned that too. That could be anywhere from 1 to 3 feet. And when you think about the Keys, not exactly high in elevation. In fact, the highest point that we have in Key West is only 18 feet. So certainly something to follow. All right, we're going to go give you more of an update of what we are seeing around Key West. In the next hour or so, we're going to find different locations and just see how things are faring. But the one constant we've had throughout much of the morning has been the wind. It's been an issue mostly during the overnight, but we expect that also to be in the increase, especially overnight. All right, let's send it back over to Stephanie.
Reynolds, real quick, with the showers, did that cool things off? Do you have like a little chill in the air? Or is there's so much heat and humidity that it's just kind of that sticky, wet, muggy feeling?
I got to tell you, Stephanie, that's a great question. When it first came down initially, there was a much cooler sense that you had. But I'll tell you, once it came down, it was enough to cool you away. But then now we've had it build right back up in terms of the humidity and more of a muggy feel to it. So there has been a switch over.
I know those different feelings. I think we can all relate to those different feelings where you get that chill and then you're instantly just feel like you're so heavy with all the humidity and the heat. Let's have a look at PTC, Potential Tropical Cyclone One. What the heck is that? What is that? Well, that is something relatively new that the National Hurricane calls an area that they believe will become a tropical storm. And they do that in order to issue things like advisories. So once you get to that tropical storm, you can issue advisories. So now they have something new. In the event that this thing doesn't become a tropical storm till here, then they have to quickly, put the advisories out. But what they do is they call it a potential tropical cyclone. So within 48 hours, if it's going to be a storm, tropical storm, then you can have the advisories. Winds are already at 40 miles an hour. So if you are a weather lover, weather follower, you're thinking, Abrams, 40-mile-an-hour winds, it should be a tropical storm. What is going on? Well, there isn't a closed low. That's the problem right now. Hurricane hunters are out there, going through this thing. So we'll see what they say at 11. Probably still be a PTC at 11. Most of the models have it going just up to a tropical storm, not a hurricane. And everything I just said is what all this text is. So we'll just skip through it and go to the next graphic here so you don't have to read that. There are your warnings. We have over 10 million here in tropical storm warnings. And then again, this is a computer generated low, all the convection off to the east because of the shear. But does the center actually form a little bit closer to the convection like it usually likes to do? That's what we'll watch. The shear is blowing everything to the east. So, Jim, that's why we're already seeing the rain here in South Florida.
So earlier today, if you're watching us, Stephanie asked me if the little mid-level spin that was just east of Miami was an area that the Hurricane Center was watching yesterday. And I said no. But I have that area, Steph, and it's actually back.
That's what they're now.
On the outlook,
that's what they're now saying is the potential, right?
But I want to show you something. So
I'm sorry. This is a wild day, Jim, for this.
Yeah, this is kind of nuts. So this is where our PTC is that Steph just talked about. You can see it here on the graphic. I just circled it in yellow. Here's this area to watch that we were watching yesterday today. All right. Now you guys tell me. All right, look at this thing.
That looks better than PTC.
How's that for a low-level center?
Yeah, that looks better than PTC.
If PTC looked like that, it would be Alex.
Yes.
All right, I'm just going to tell you that right now. But look at the convection, and this is coming into Bermuda, so we're going to have some heavy showers and thunderstorms coming your way, and then you'll deal with PTC 1. This is also coming at you as we get into Sunday night and Monday. So notice back here where this heavily sheared system really doesn't have that circulation like you saw on the visible with that area to watch. They only give that a 10% area. It's got a small window, but this thing is so east side loaded. And even looking at the radar to Key West now, I mean, there's a little mid-level spin near Havana. There's another one in the Florida Straits. I don't know if this, the last chapter's been written on this thing. Either way, we're going to watch a lot of rain come up from Cuba, especially this afternoon and tonight, coming into the Keys, coming into South Florida. So the worst of the weather will be tonight in the state of Florida.
This is CBS 4 News at noon.
Well, we're tracking the tropics at noon. South Florida is getting soaked by this disturbance heading our way. The rain is expected to last through the rest of the day, the night, and into tomorrow.
And this is a live look at the radar right now in South Florida. As you can see, not a dry spot to be had anywhere. We are live on air and streaming on CBS News app. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Candace Gibson.
And I'm Nicole Lauren in for Maribel. Rain and lots of it. That's the impact on South Florida the rest of the afternoon into tomorrow morning.
And you see the culprit behind us right there. There are also flood concerns. We have live team coverage right now, tracking every aspect of this storm and its impact on you. We begin with CBS 4 meteorologist Lisette Gonzalez with the latest. Lisette.
Good afternoon, everyone. A tropical storm warning is in effect for all of South Florida. A flood watch as well through Sunday, as this is our biggest concern. Already flood advisories are in effect for Miami-Dade and parts of Broward County. Flood advisory including Hialeah, Kendall Lakes, Tamiami. In addition, we have another flood advisory that was just issued for portions of Broward and Northern Dade, including Hollywood, Miami Gardens, Pembroke Pines. It has been raining since overnight and through the morning, and now even midday, and will continue throughout the day today and much of tomorrow. As you'll see, we have some moderate rain at Lighthouse Point, some heavier downpours in Lauderhill, as well as Sunrise and Tamarack and Davie, Weston, Southwest Ranches, dealing with some heavy downpours, as well as around Hard Rock Stadium, Aventura, North Miami, North Bay Village, Miami Beach, Hialeah, Doral, Miami Lakes, Sweetwater. Also seeing some of that rain in the hammocks, Kendall Lakes, Kendall getting hit hard, Palmetto Bay, Cutler Bay, and all these showers are moving in across the upper Keys, the middle Keys, the lower Keys, all of South Florida getting soaked. And as we head throughout the day, we're going to continue with these heavy rain bands and gusty squalls. Looking at the forecast models, I'm going to take you through hour by hour, and we are going to continue to deal with this persistent rain, some heavier downpours into the afternoon. At 5 o'clock, the evening rush is looking soggy, and of course, meteorologist Dave Warren will be tracking it all for you. But as we head throughout the evening, 6 and 7 p.m., we could see some of the nastier storms. And by the way, isolated tornadoes will be possible as we head into tonight. I think that's when we're going to see the worst of the weather. Check it out. Look at forecast models around 9 p.m., 10, 11 p.m., noticing some of the heavier downpours possible as we head in through even midnight and overnight tonight. You're going to want to stay with us and stay weather alert tomorrow morning. morning. Still a wet start with some scattered storms and some lingering rain bands moving through. We still could see some gusty winds and flooding because of all the rainfall that's anticipated here as we head throughout the next few days. So 11 a.m. still potential tropical cyclone One, as we don't have that well-defined low-level center of circulation yet. Hurricane Hunter's not finding that, but it is moving to the northeast at 5 miles per hour and forecast to move over warm waters here and become a depression, a tropical storm likely later this evening. Do not focus on the center of the track or the cone for that matter. Although it is expected to move across the west coast of Florida, we're going to be feeling the impacts well to the south and east of this system. It's a lopsided system. So what's next? Tropical storm warning issued because we are going to deal with tropical storm winds potentially, especially late tonight into tomorrow. 40-mile-per-hour winds are stronger, which could lead to power outages and down trees. And there is a severe risk of isolated tornadoes.
You're looking at flash flooding in parts of Cancun, all thanks to our potential tropical cyclone, PTC One. We are starting off the season right away. Several streets here underwater, obviously causing trouble for the folks there, the tourists trying to get around. This is what we very likely will be looking at across sections of South Florida with very heavy rain, the big issue out of this storm. And we have seen the wind picking up, the rain picking up, and the waves kicking up in a big way here at the southernmost point. Of course, a picturesque spot, usually a line to get a photo. Dr. Knapp, can't imagine folks are going to want to be out there later today. Visibilities are really going to drop off with the heavy rain, so you may not get a good picture.
No, and you've got the winds gusting to tropical storm force. You've got the waves crashing onto the shoreline, and you've got increasingly heavy rainfall. Yeah. And, you know, remember, Key West just across the Florida Straits from Cuba, and that's another country that's going to be dealing with the flash flooding in addition to Mexico.
Yeah, we are monitoring all for you. You are watching Weather Underground. I'm Alex Wilson. You just heard from our hurricane expert, Dr. Rick Knapp. A lot to cover with this. Even though it may not become Tropical Storm Alex, the effects are going to be the same either way. We've got the tropical storm warnings posted because of that potential tropical cyclone status. So they want to get the warnings out, let people know what to expect. But again, the big issue with this is going to be the water. Plenty of 3 to 5 inch totals coming in, mostly over the next 24 hours, some 5 to 8 inch totals. So Dr. Knapp, your main concern is flash flooding and perhaps quite a lot of it.
Yeah, and I wouldn't be shocked if a couple of isolated spots get to double digits on rainfall, and with these impervious paved metro areas of South Florida, we could have some significant flash flooding later today and especially overnight tonight and tomorrow morning. Now, this is a system that is producing sustained winds of tropical storm force out over the water here, way away from the center, and it's got a pressure of 1,003 millibars, so it's behaving like a low-end tropical storm. It just doesn't have the organizational criteria in terms of the well-defined center and the organization of the thunderstorm activity to be called a tropical storm. So that's why it's good that the Hurricane Center can write advisories on these systems anyway, get the tropical storm watches and then warnings up anyway, and for us to be able to focus on the hazards. Primarily, we're going to be dealing with water, and it will have a chance to strengthen a little bit more after it leaves the U.S. and could brush by Bermuda on Monday or Tuesday. But let's focus on what's going to be happening here over the Western Caribbean, Southeast Gulf, Cuba and Florida, where we've got, you know, the southerly flow that's very potent on the east side of this lopsided system. There's the center circulation up in there near Cancun. But look at the winds picking up. We've got, you know, gusts that have occasionally been at 40 miles an hour in Key West, 36 at Marathon, 30 or so when the squalls come through Miami and Fort Lauderdale. So it's, you know, it's like a stormy June day, just a little bit amped up in terms of the persistence and coverage of the rainfall. And this is just kind of table setting rain because it's going to get even heavier and more persistent. Just the last 6 hours, we've had a swath of heavy rain in Broward and Miami-Dade counties coming into the Naples, Marco Island area. But the last 24 hours, Western Florida has picked up quite a bit. And that is just making you even more vulnerable to flooding. And along with the heavy rainfall, 2-3 inch per hour rain rates, and some of you getting a lot of heavy rainfall, that's why we're so vulnerable to flash flooding. And again, you might get some breaks in the rain, but Alex, I don't like the way this future radar looks overnight tonight. The coverage and the intensity with record amounts of moisture in the atmosphere will be tremendous.
This is WPTV News Channel 5 at 4.
Welcome back this afternoon. So our entire weather team is on deck, led by Chief Meteorologist Steve Wiggle now. So we're keeping a watch on everything, Steve. And I'm looking at this radar, and there is not a spot that's dry in the entire south, well, south of Sebastian for sure.
We were getting a lot of complaints lately about the lack of rainfall. Yeah. Well, Shannon, that won't be the case this weekend because there's more on the way. It's already raining in quite a few spots, and it's going to continue. In fact, pick up quite a bit overnight and into tomorrow morning. There's a look at the latest on what is a potential tropical cyclone number 1, which means it has the chance of becoming a depression or a storm. The hurricane uses this terminology so that it can give us a track and issue tropical storm warnings. We could see tropical storm force winds develop here. There's a chance for those heading into the overnight hours and into early Saturday. The latest track brings this system in across the southwest coast of Florida overnight, and with a landfall that would be tomorrow morning, more than likely, around Fort Myers, Naples, southwest Florida, and then tracking it across the state. Now, it's messy, very disorganized weather maker. Even if it does develop into a depression or a storm, almost all of the rainfall and the stronger winds are to the east, ahead of the center. So that is something that we want everyone to realize. And here's a perfect example of that. So the low-level center is trying to develop right here. Well, all of the rain and all the clouds and all of the gusty winds, they're all on the eastern side of this. I mean, if you were out here in the Gulf of Mexico, it's sunny right now, very close to the center. So everything is displaced to the east. So we're seeing some of that right now. We'll continue to see it overnight. And as we get into more of the core of this, around sunrise through maybe 9, 10 in the morning, that's when we'll see some of the gustier winds and some of the heavier rains work through. Here's a look at our local radar. It's just one wave of rain after another. We get a little bit of a break. There are stronger storms that are working in through the Keys now, with lots of lightning. If these hold together, that'll bring in rain rates that will be several inches per hour, more than likely. Flood watch is in effect into Sunday morning for the entire area. So we could see 4 to 8 inches of rain. I think a little on the lower side for the Treasure Coast, a little higher in Palm Beach County, and a massive improvement. I mean, by this time tomorrow, most of our area will be sunny again. And Sunday looks fantastic. So it's really just the overnight hours, this evening and overnight, and likely for most spots through noon on Saturday, and then a dramatic change after that. Shannon.
We've got you covered with live team coverage across South Florida, but we begin with our team of meteorologists, NBC6 meteorologist Ryan Phillips and hurricane specialist John Morales.
All right, ladies, thank you. Good evening. It's been a messy day across the area. John, these early season storms are typically really messy.
Yeah, I mean, and if, to a degree, thankfully, right? Because we're not dealing with something that has any potential of developing or intensifying rapidly, if you will. So no worry about this becoming a big windstorm. But I tell you what, even in its disorganized state, it's already producing the rain, and there's a lot more rain coming, and that's what we're concerned about.
Yeah, we're just getting into that. First and foremost, the big picture here, as we've gone through the afternoon hours, we have not seen any further development. It's still potential tropical cyclone number 1, and the system at any time, John, of course, could become Alex, but that's not really the focus tonight. We're going to watch the system continue to lift off to the north and to the east. It's still with winds right around 40 miles per hour. The hurricane hunters, though, today unable to find really a closed center of circulation. But of course, the wind field is large, and more importantly, the moisture plume wrapped into this is expansive off to the east. This is what John and I were just talking about. The upper level wind shear really shredding this and pushing all the deep moisture off to the east. Look at all this dry air sweeping in behind the system. This will continue to accelerate it off to the north and to the east. So also keep it from organizing too much. And that's the reason these early season systems usually have kind of an uphill battle. They don't look like a classic system, but the one thing that they certainly have, or this system certainly has, deep moisture rolling our way. So it's been a wet day in the Keys with 1 to 2 inches of rain, but more strong storms heading our way as we go into the evening hours. Just using the velocity mode, we're starting to see some rotation in these storms when we look up in the atmosphere. So this is something that we're going to watch later in the evening and through the overnight hours especially, and that's when we're going to talk more about our tornado threat. But the threat for some heavy rainfall, expansive across the Florida Keys, but then also here into Metro South Florida. Again, through the afternoon hours for us, we've had about 1.5 to 2.5 inches of rain. And these heavy rains are still moving through Broward County, even though there's a little bit of a break right now in Miami-Dade. More wet weather coming. We're talking through tonight, and by midday tomorrow, still an additional 4 to 8 inches. And the concern for flash flooding, it will only grow through the overnight hours into the early morning hours on Saturday. But again, all tied into a messy system, but still somewhat potent. And let's talk more about the details on that. Here is hurricane specialist John Morales.
You know, Ryan, as you showed the storm relative velocity image there off our first alert Doppler 6000, important to note, we are under a tropical storm warning. I mean, listen, I know it's not even a depression yet, it's just a potential tropical cyclone, but tropical storm conditions are expected. And, well, one of the things that you see when tropical storm conditions are expected is tornadoes. So let's keep that in mind, all right? Overnight and into tomorrow, the risk of some tornadoes, isolated but present. Usually these are weak, but even a weak tornado can cause some havoc in spots. Florida Keys will see that risk first. It could spread into the metro area later on during the overnight. Listen, this system is definitely quite messy. It's lopsided. The showers and thunderstorms displaced east of a potential center of circulation somewhere in this vicinity. I'd say that because the planes have been in there today and the aircraft reconnaissance actually have found multiple centers. So this is yet to consolidate into something that you can call a tropical depression or a storm. However, it really doesn't matter. I mean, at the end of the day here in South Florida, what have we been calling for mostly? What is the biggest threat? Even bigger threat than the isolated tornadoes we might see is the risk of some very serious flooding that we could have overnight and into tomorrow as the system heads towards the northeast and passes just off to our north to put the Florida Keys and to put southern Florida on the active side, on the so-called dirty side of the storm where a lot of this activity tends to happen.
Night-team storm coverage across South Florida starts now.
And this is what Miami looks like at this hour. The Magic City is Moisture City tonight. South Florida and the Keys are under a tropical storm warning.
And if you're leaving the house tonight or tomorrow morning, you can expect to see slick streets. The rain not going anywhere anytime soon. Hello and welcome, everyone. We are tracking what could soon become the season's first tropical storm.
Regardless of whether it gets named, flooding is going to be a problem in some places. And Chief Meteorologist Phil Farrow is here to start us off. Phil.
And it has been a problem today in some areas. We still have a lot of moisture coming in out of the south. These are some of the rainfall totals for today. Margate better than 2.5 inches, the same in Hollywood. Weston just a little bit under that. About 1 3/4 inches to 2 across Pembroke Pines, South Miami, West Kendall, and over an inch in Marathon, 1 1/3 inches in Key West, and almost 1.5 inches in Miami. And it is still coming down. We're looking at that moisture plume coming out of the south, impacting the Florida Keys, mainland, South Florida, Dade, and Broward. And a lot of this is hugging the coast. You will notice that we have a lot of little markers here. Those represent the early stages of a funnel cloud, or we could have some water spouts that are emerging, and all of this rain still impacting the area from Marathon, the Overseas Highway, all the way through Key Largo. It then picks up right across southern Miami-Dade County from Miami through the Hammocks and Homestead. It has rained quite a bit in this area, and the National Weather Service has issued a street flood advisory until midnight. About 1 to 3 inches of rain have come down, and a couple more will be on the way. Now let's take a look at northern Miami-Dade County. You can see that we have pockets of heavy rain from the coast as far west as the Turnpike and Chrome Avenue. All that moisture is also moving in to Broward County, basically west here of I-95 in through Weston, US 27. Moderate rainfall, heavier here. As a matter of fact, the National Weather Service just issuing another street flood advisory, basically for Weston, I-75, Rolling Oaks until 11:45 this evening. Now, this system hasn't moved much throughout the day, and it's really not that well organized. You can almost split it in half. It is dry to the west. Most of the clouds and the rain are to the east, but there's a lot of moisture here in the Caribbean, Cuba, the Florida Straits, moving into South Florida, and that's what we will see tonight and tomorrow. A lot of folks asking, where has the wind been? Well, let's take a look at some of the wind gusts today. Key West, 48, 39 in Marathon. Fort Lauderdale, 30-mile-per-hour wind gusts, 31 in Miami. And Fort Lauderdale Executive, 32 miles per hour winds. Now, where are the very strong winds? Well, they're sitting here just on the east side of where the center of circulation is. Again, nothing on the west, clear skies, very little activity. We do have some strong upper level winds causing some shear and keeping it in check. By the way, this wind field stretches out about 175 miles. So by tomorrow, as the system gets closer, we may see a little better chance of some gusty winds here. Here's the forecast cone. Should make landfall sometime Saturday at 2 p.m. A reminder that we are going to be on the dirty side since all the clouds and the rain are to the east. So here's the wind field with winds over 39 miles per hour. By tomorrow, we should see the Keys picking up on that. Then Miami-Dade and Broward counties. That should be sometime Saturday afternoon. So that's probably going to be the time when we might feel the strongest winds. I'll have a lot more on this a little bit later on.
Okay, Phil, well, tonight's rain has one community dealing with knee-high water right outside their homes. Tonight's team's Franklin White is in Hialeah to give us a look around there. Franklin.
And as the rain keeps falling, Craig, the water is still rising, and right now it is deep, as you mentioned. It is almost to my knees. If you pan down that way, Manny, you're seeing homes along West 14th Lane in Hialeah. Folks who live there say this happens every single time it rains. Water quickly gathers, and in some cases, they say the water seeps into their homes, and many are forced to leave their small cars parked elsewhere because those small cars can't drive through this flooding. Now, here's some video from earlier to show you how deep the water is, showing drivers taking it very slow and being very careful. The water is so deep that when trucks drove by us earlier, you could feel the force of the waves. Residents say they've been complaining about this flooding for years, and nothing is being done about it. They spoke to us about their frustrations. Listen.
The water comes through, and it comes through our bedroom. It goes up our stairs. We can't even bring our kids to school.
Every time it rains nonstop, it always happens. It takes like 3 days to dry out, and sometimes we can't even move or we can't go anywhere. And my car, we have to park it all the way in the back. And sometimes it's just like the water gets up to our knees.
As you can see, like the houses here aren't that very high. So like you could hear the neighbors like get frustrated because their backyard is like flooded.
So back out live to West 14th Lane in Hialeah, as you can see, the rain is still falling down and the water is still rising. As I mentioned earlier, the water is now approaching our knees, so people are staying inside. The water, they say, is still going to the homes in some cases. We'll have more on this story at 11. Reporting live in Hialeah tonight, Franklin White, 7 News 19.
Live, the one and only Local 10 News starts right now.
Right now at 11, we're tracking potential tropical cyclone One as it moves closer to South Florida.
The system already dumping rain across our area, and it's expected to continue through the weekend. Our weather authority is closely following the storm.
Hurricane specialist and storm surge expert Michael Lowry is standing by, but let's kick things off now with our chief certified meteorologist Betty Davis and the new advisory that just came in. Betty.
Good evening. No big changes here. Still just a sloppy, disorganized system, and the story continues to be the rainfall that is coming in over South Florida. So I'll get you straight to the Doppler radar. We've got flood advisories popping up out there tonight. Heavy rainfall right along the immediate east coast that we've been tracking. Some of that rolling up over Miami Beach and around downtown Miami as well. But notice the areas outlined in the green. Those are the flood advisories in parts of Broward and into Miami-Dade too. But right now, the heavier rains, as I mentioned, are right along the east coast of Miami Beach and out over the Atlantic water. Some of the gustier thunderstorms. Middle and upper Keys, by the way, still getting slammed with some of those soaking, gusting downpours lifting up from the south. And more of that's going to continue to push into South Miami-Dade. Notice Homestead, a flood advisory continuing there. So the wet weather is indeed upon us, and it's going to take a little bit to get out of this. We could end up with some isolated spots picking up to a foot of rainfall, but generally speaking, some 4 to 8 inches across the area, and we're under a flood watch through Sunday morning. But let's talk about this system, the disturbance, a bit more. Bring in our hurricane specialist and storm surge expert, Michael Lowry. Good evening, Michael. It's just not any better put together tonight.
Good evening, Betty. Hostile upper level winds really doing a number on our system tonight. Take a look at the visible satellite picture, and what you'll see is less of the red and orange colors on our satellite tonight, indicating that these thunderstorms are really getting blown away from where the broad center of circulation is, right here just to the western tip of Cuba. Hurricane hunters have been flying this all evening long, looking for a more organized area of low pressure and not finding it as of now. Rain and winds, you can see the rainfall from our radar far away from where the center of circulation is, in fact, continuing to blow blow off to the east. That's a good thing. Without those showers and thunderstorms over where the low pressure center is, it's going to be hard for this to organize anymore, especially as it gets closer to the coastline. Doesn't really change the big impacts for us. That heavy rainfall already moving into our viewing area has been raining all day across the lower Keys into now that heavy rainfall really making it into Miami-Dade, into Broward counties. That will continue through the overnight hours and into early tomorrow. You can see here on our water vapor picture the tail of two air masses. We have dry air, very dry air to the west of this low pressure area, and then that rich, deep tropical moisture that is just feeding up into our area. That dry air is going to come back into the story here as we move into Sunday. You can see as we time this out, we're looking at a potential impact here in terms of the low pressure coming over land sometime tomorrow morning. That deep moisture is going to wrap its way through, but then on the backside, we talk about drier air moving in for Sunday. So the rain, although we're going to have that heavy rain through the morning hours tomorrow, we should start to clear out by tomorrow afternoon, and then things look better for Sunday. Back to you.
Thank you so much, Michael. And tracking all of that rainfall as it moves in, another look at the Doppler radar and the flood advisories, and where we see how the rain, some of the heaviest, is right around Miami Beach, extending down toward the upper Keys. So we'll keep an eye on this. Still that outside threat of maybe an isolated tornado, a brief spin up. But again, the heavy rainfall, that's going to be the deal here. And we're not out of the woods yet for some flash flooding even. For now, I think the flooding is more minor out there, but things will change through the overnight. So stay aware. Calvin?
Okay, Betty, we will. Thanks to you. South Florida bracing for flooding as the storm approaches.
We have team coverage with reporters stationed in both Broward and Miami-Dade counties. But let's start with Janine Stanwood. She is live in Hialeah. Janine.
Right now we are in a mobile home community. This is just north of Okeechobee Road, and I want to show you my boots. We have just a couple of inches of rain where we are, and I want to show you up the street. You can take a look at how these cars are parked up on higher ground on the sides of the street. This is an indication that these people have been through this before. Let's go to video from just a short time ago. In fact, we saw people driving through these flooded streets earlier tonight, trying to make the best of their Friday night. Most people here in this community tell us every time there is heavy rain, every time there is prolonged rain, there is flooding. In fact, we talked to one man, his name was Pepe. He says he's lived here for about 25 years, and every time there's rain like this, he does worry about water coming into his house. Take a listen.
Agua en su casa. Mucha agua aquí, para todo. Esto molesta aquí a todo el mundo. Por favor, los políticos que vean esto.
He, of course, wishes that more could be done, but in the meantime, he is keeping his fingers crossed. All throughout the night, there has been steady rain here in inland Miami-Dade. That's where we have been. Nothing super heavy, although it has picked up here in Hialeah. And as Betty mentioned, no major flooding here, especially in Miami-Dade County. But this is really a lot of what we've been seeing. Places that are in low-lying areas or that are prone to flooding just getting worse. So most of these people here, Calvin and Janice, in this neighborhood, they're keeping their fingers crossed.
All eyes are on the sky and potential tropical cyclone One. The system moving in just days after the start of hurricane season.
That storm already causing flooding all across South Florida. This is a scene at a mobile home park in Hialeah where the water is nearly knocking on residents' doorsteps. We're going to head there live in just a few minutes.
And in Miami Beach, a different kind of tropical vacation for tourists along 17th and Collins. You can see the streets there soaked, leaving the roads looking more like rivers. Our weather authority is closely following this storm.
Let's get right to weather certified meteorologist Brandon.
Yeah, let's start with the latest update because we are waiting on the 5 a.m. advisory on potential tropical cyclone number 1. It is still not a tropical storm. The latest advisory does have maximum sustained winds at 40 miles per hour, but it's not organized enough to be called Tropical Storm Alex just yet. And from what I'm seeing, it may not become Tropical Storm Alex until it's on the other side of Florida a little bit later on tonight or on the day Sunday. At that point, the effects to Florida are really starting to go down. So this is what the storm system looks like. Extremely disorganized. Strong winds up near the clouds just tearing this thing apart. It's had some big challenges to beat this wind shear, and it's been losing that. And that's exactly what we want to see for the most part. So that's why it's still disorganized. But we'll watch some blow up of thunderstorms like you see down here towards Cuba. Some of that could still rotate in our direction. So we'll still watch it carefully. When we zoom in and turn it black and white, you can see one decent circulation way out here, but that's not the center of the storm, really. There's a couple of circulations out here. So until there's one well-defined circulation, this is not a tropical storm, but we are getting tropical storm-like conditions out there overnight, and that includes that heavy rain potential that we knew was coming, and it's definitely here. Flash flood warnings continue through Miami, all the way up the I-95 corridor up to around Fort Lauderdale. These have been continued until around 6 a.m. at least. Some flooding will probably persist past 6 a.m. just because it's so extensive out there. We're finally getting the rain to let up just slightly for the first time in a while through downtown Miami. There's a lot of road closures through downtown Miami right now. I would avoid the area completely. Numerous cars stalled out. I could see it on some of the traffic cameras too. And if we look down to the south out of Biscayne Bay, another push of heavy rain. The flooding in downtown Miami will probably get worse over the next hour before we see it improve a little bit later on this morning. So just a heads up there. We're getting some significant flooding reports starting now in Hollywood up to Fort Lauderdale as well. Very heavy rain continues to move in. These places will pick up several more inches of rain before all is said and done. Look at this feed of tropical moisture all the way down into the Keys that we have yet to come. Down into the lower Keys near Key West, we're still a little gusty. Winds gusting to 33 miles per hour there. I saw one. So a lot of the rain is starting to break up in those parts. It'll be more spotty downpours for the rest of the day, not the steady stuff like we have in Miami right now. Look at these rainfall totals. Extremely impressive. In Little Havana, more than 8.5 inches of rain. These numbers are probably going to exceed 10 inches of rain since yesterday, which is pretty extreme. That's typical of tropical systems we see in June. They're normally very weak, but prolific rainmakers. This is our model showing it starting to break up a little bit as we get late morning into this afternoon. Perhaps the sun comes out this afternoon in spots. That'll be nice to see, but we'll still have heavy downpours in between that could pose a flooding threat in certain areas into this evening. Coming up, we're going to talk about when does this rain fully pull out of here and the big time heat on the way after. Lots more to cover, plus an update on radar too coming up.
Okay, we want to take you now to some live pictures. This is the southernmost point in the U.S. You see here waves crashing against the seawall. Key West, as tropical disturbance moves over South Florida, really speaks to just what we are dealing with, what we're going to continue to be dealing with over the next few hours.
Meanwhile, right now, thousands of people in South Florida waking up in the dark. Florida Power and Light says more than 4,200 customers are without power in Miami-Dade. That number a little bit lower in Broward, about 1,200 people in the dark there. The company not reporting any outages in the Keys, though.
We are still watching potential tropical cyclone One this morning. Rain hitting our area. I'm Taylor Hernandez. It is 5:30 on your Saturday.
And I'm Felicia Rodriguez. Thank you for staying with us on this Saturday, June 4th. We are calling this a first warning weather day as we are still under a tropical storm warning. And at the bottom right-hand corner of your screen, you'll see a QR code. You can scan it with your phone, and that will take you to our hurricane survival guide.
But first, we have live team coverage this morning, keeping you prepared and informed as you head out the door. We've got Caroline Coles and Suji Nam bringing us the latest conditions outside. Back inside, we've got a team of first warning meteorologists. We've got Vanessa Vanette, Sandra Shaw, and Glenn Glazer here tracking the tropics for you. First things first, let's send it right over to Vanessa.
Thanks, ladies. And right now, time is 5:30, and the latest advisory as of the 5 o'clock advisory, it is speeding up. Northeast at 18 miles per hour, just hasn't been updating our system. You can see the system just on the west coast of Florida, just spreading all that rain and the clouds right over South Florida, and that will continue to pour pretty much until early afternoon. So basically the latest forecast track, it will still take it towards the northeast and then become a tropical storm system once it moves over the Atlantic Ocean with sustained winds of 50 miles per hour. But again, we're going to say goodbye to the rain later in the afternoon hour. We're still under that flood watch, so just keep that in mind from the Treasure Coast down into the Palm Beaches and lots lots of rain still coming down from Vero Beach down into Stewart's area. Heavier rains in Jupiter all the way down towards Boca Raton. Even some flash flood warnings posted for Broward and Miami-Dade counties. They saw up to 7 to even 8 inches of rain down there in the last couple of hours. We'll have more on this in the next few minutes.
Vanessa, thank you. Those heavy rains causing flooding in Miami overnight. Just take a look at this video. This is new video out of Brickell Inn at 5:31 this morning. This system hitting southern Palm Beach County now, where we now have the potential for some flooding. That video hard to watch, people driving through that.
Yeah, that is a lot of rain, and we continue to see images like that all over social media. Our Suji Nam is in Boca Raton this morning. Suji, how is it looking in South County?
Yeah, I mean, not like the pictures that we're seeing out of Miami as of yet. And right now I'm here on North Federal Highway. And if you can see, we've been out here for about 2 or so hours. And when I just got here, that flooding maybe started right where I'm standing right now. But at this point, a couple hours later, that flooding is actually going towards the end of the street, or end of this lane rather. And it's starting to get pretty rough out here. We've seen a couple of cars having to slow down because of the flooding and because of the water that's been splashing around that they need to slow down for. But overall, it's been a pretty quiet area here on North Federal Highway, and this is not something that we're new to. And in fact, a couple of weeks ago in Boca Raton, we saw lots of flooding on the streets here. So definitely people are concerned, and residents, employees are concerned, and they just tell us that they're getting ready for whatever ways they can to keep themselves safe. We also talked to Boca Raton city officials who tell us that they're monitoring the canals, they're monitoring the canal levels as well as the storm drainage system to make sure that they can help prevent the flooding as much as possible. We'll be out here all morning to monitor it out, but make sure to stay safe if you're out on the roads. Reporting live in Boca Raton, I'm Suji Nam for WPBF 25 News.
Suji, thank you. Stay safe out there. South Florida certainly no stranger to flooding. For those planning on hitting the roads early, though, it is best to leave as soon as you can. The road is slick and wet out there.
Yeah, a lot of ponding on the roads if you're not seeing flooding. Look at this video taken around 3:30 this morning of a Pepsi truck turned sideways on the southbound lanes of 95 and PGA Boulevard. And let's go ahead and take a live look now at I-95 and PGA. As you can see, very wet out there. No traffic backups to report because most people are staying off the roads this morning, which is a good idea. We do have a QR code at the bottom of your screen. If you can scan that QR code with your phone, that will take you to our interactive traffic maps on our WPBF website. There you can time out your morning drive. Meanwhile, some important updates from Palm Beach County for you. Libraries, parks, beaches will all be closed today because of the wet weather. Also, Palm Tran Connection, and Go Glades will not operate, although they will return to service on Sunday. And we are continuing our weather team coverage. Meteorologist Sandra Shaw joining us now. Sandra.
Well, Felicia, I know you're familiar with the Kendall area, and they have seen 7.4 inches of rain between Kendall and Cutler down near South Miami. But for us, it's been somewhat measured. The highest totals that we have right now, 3.6 inches, and that's around Boynton all the way down through the Delray area. Boca, you've seen almost 3 inches of rainfall, which again, compared to what we saw just a couple of weeks ago, is not that big of a deal. But it has been consistent, and we still have one or two more swaths that could produce heavy rains in a short amount of time because of the rapidity or the uptick in the speed and velocity of the system. There's also going to be this one last blast that runs through here later on, but you can clearly see all of this that flooded South Miami all the way up into Fort Lauderdale is moving in our direction. So there's still some concern this morning. That's why all the way from Boca up into Jupiter, we are under a flood advisory. Let's go where there's actual dangerous situations right now. Flash flood warning between Coral Springs and down in Fort Lauderdale. So this is not the morning to try your hand at heading southward on 95. You saw what happened to that Pepsi truck. And we go down to another flash flood warning, which means that there's just racing water that can sweep things away in a short instant. Between Pembroke Pines, Coral City, right here along the interstate, Davie, and then Hialeah, Surfside, and southern parts of Miami-Dade, into even Coral Gables are under another flash flood warning. So the fact that we have 3 that are active now, it reveals that the danger isn't over yet.
significant flooding. And Steve, where I am right now, water's probably up to my ankles. This is not the worst of it. We've seen cars where their entire front ends have been submerged in water due to the flooding that's occurring right now in Brickell. Now, I think this is the perfect time to mention all the things you just said, Steve. Charnay asking that question, if it's going to become Alex, when it becomes Alex. I think that it just shows, it's a great lesson in how insignificant the storm name and the storm category are for being impactful, especially in South Florida, where we've seen massive growth in the city. We have numerous impermeable surfaces. Basically, the water just has nowhere to go because of how much our city has expanded. And Brickell is a perfect example of that. These flooded roadways that you see behind me, people trying to get through on the sidewalks, people trying to drive to their wherever they may be going on this Saturday morning, they just can't do it. And this isn't a rare occurrence here in this location. We've seen significant rainfall from your average run-of-the-mill afternoon summertime thunderstorms that have caused similar flooding in this area. But today, 8 to 10 inches in the location that I'm in, and it is causing quite the problems here across parts of Brickell. And it's not just Brickell. Downtown Miami, we drove through and saw similar conditions. So that flood watch that you mentioned, the flood flash flood warnings, all for good reason. If you can, I know we've all said it this morning, but staying home, staying off the roads is going to be your best bet. Throw on a movie, enjoy some time indoors because the rain is not done yet, and we will be continuing, I have a feeling, to see folks getting stuck in these roads as the rain continues to fall. For now, I'll send it back over to you guys.
All right, Angie, thanks so much. And yes, more rain is to come. Angie, I think you have a great idea. Netflix and chill a little bit until noon. And then after noon, it does get a lot better. We promise you that.
Exactly.
Well, tropical trouble slamming down on South Florida this morning with several advisories issued across our area. Drivers finding themselves in sinking situations with the continuous downpour. Here's a look at some of the bad flooding in the Miami area. Look at that car. You could barely see the tires there. It looks like a Mini Cooper. We want to give you a live look at downtown Miami on this Saturday morning. The rain has not stopped falling down. It's barely visible out there. Let's get you started with a check on the weather.
Meteorologist Erica Delgado in the Pledge this morning with a first look at your forecast. Erica, it's safe to say if you don't have to drive, just stay in the house this morning.
Absolutely. Today's one of those days where you want to stay inside, possibly for your own good, just because of the flooding that we are seeing. And I should say flash flooding, because we are seeing very deep floods across portions of South Florida, especially our metro and coastal areas. Now, as far as our system, still not a tropical depression or a storm. It is potential storm number 1. As you can see, looking very poorly organized this morning as compared to yesterday. And really, you can see all of the convection, the showers and the thunderstorms associated with it, very displaced from the center, all of it to the east of the center. And that's why we're seeing these flooding rains since yesterday. We'll jump right into the latest advisory, and that was as of 5 a.m. Still winds of 40 miles per hour. But the National Hurricane Center not finding a center of circulation. You can see all of that now beginning to push out east, while the center is still somewhere in the Gulf of Mexico. And I say somewhere because it is so poorly organized, they're having a difficult time finding exactly where it is. But the latest models do show that it's a little over 150 miles to the southwest of Fort Myers. It has gained forward speed, moving towards the northeast at 18 miles per hour. If it begins to look a bit more organized later today, then the actual position and the speed of this system may actually change before making landfall somewhere along the west to central southwest coast of Florida. So here's the latest forecast track, still consistent as to what we've been seeing the last few days. The system moving across southwest Florida and then exiting into the Atlantic at some point later this evening and into early on Sunday. For us here in South Florida, we remain out of the cone, but as you can see, that means nothing because we've been dealing with the moisture associated with this system since yesterday. And that is why the National Weather Service placed us under a flood watch earlier in the week. Well, it remains in place for all of South Florida, at least through the Upper Keys, until Sunday morning, and you can see exactly why. Now, also something worth mentioning for this morning is it will be the best chance for any severe threat as far as isolated tornadoes are concerned as we continue to see those batches of pushing through. So we'll leave a slight chance for some isolated tornadoes, especially along the East Coast and Atlantic coast here through the morning, and then that should diminish later on today. And you can see exactly why, because we're seeing these bands pushing through. It's been ongoing since yesterday, and some spots have received well over 9 to 10 inches of rain in the last 24 hours.
Big examples of not what to be doing driving through
all that water.
That is a lot of flooding in South Florida. That is going to be the legacy of this system as it moves on by.
Absolutely. Well, we've got the live crews on the ground across South Florida as potential tropical cyclone One churns in the Gulf.
Meteorologist Paul Goodloe joins us live from Miami. And Paul, with the heavy rain still in progress, obviously that is clearly the biggest risk with this system.
Yeah, and that's what we've been talking about for days here. The threats here, impacts, no matter whether it has a name, it might get a name a day from now. That doesn't matter. It's weather impacts, that heavy rain. As we were talking about, the rain picked up last night, overnight, and all morning long. And you have some low-lying areas here in downtown Miami, street flooding. And we've had numerous cars out here. This one by one, the wreckers have been out here kind of pulling them out of the way. But people are still driving through here. Now, you know, I even watched some of the local news stations, and there are people, reporters, in the water. This is just, I see the curb here, so I know how deep it is right here. And look at the barrels here. Those barrels, those kind of construction barrels, on me, the top is right here at my waist. So imagine you have probably at least 3.5 feet of floodwaters here, and people driving through there. There have been numerous cars, and there's actually a Mustang over to the right. We'll kind of show you coming up later this morning. But, you know, it looks like it's just flat. You can drive through here, and the next thing you know, your car is going through 3.5 feet of water. Unless you're driving a monster truck, most vehicles will stall out, and then you have basically maybe a total loss of your vehicle. I even saw a Tesla just drive through here. Yes, they don't have an internal combustion engine, but they have a motor, and it runs on battery, and there's nothing but electricity. So even those cars are not immune to this. Major headaches trying to get around the Brickell area and downtown Miami, even some street flooding in Miami Beach. So we've been saying this for a while. If you don't have to go out, don't. It's even on the highways, there's ponding and puddles, and something you can drive through at 20 miles per hour, not a big deal. Something driving through 65 miles per hour, you lose contact with the road, and you'll see spinouts. I've seen spinouts on even the causeway leading from Miami Beach. Good news is we do expect some sunshine to come through this afternoon. The bad news is we're getting another band of rain. We can still see more bands of rain, and even though the soil here across South Florida is very sandy and can kind of absorb this flood water after a while, with more heavy rain coming, and even a half hour of heavy rain can quickly cause these floodwaters to rise back again. Tomorrow looks wall to wall, far drier than today, but still can't rule out some scattered showers. So yeah, don't get caught up in whether this thing has a name or not. It's the impacts and it's the weather. Many areas here have picked up between, say, 5 and over 8 inches of rain since we started seeing the rain come in yesterday. So we already had an excess in Miami of 5 inches of rain yesterday. Now we're probably doubling that. We might have a yearly excess of maybe 8 to 10 above average. And as you see, that is causing a lot of problems here. So I know it's a weekend. People love to flock out in Miami and Miami Beach as well. You want to definitely make sure you know that it's safe. Just rule of thumb, if you see the curb, okay, you got a little water. Most cars can go through there. If you can't see the curb, find another way. And also, another rule of thumb, typically, one side of the street might be higher than the other. If you have to drive around there, get that higher side where you could see the curb. You might be able to get through there slowly and safely. But Dr. Postel, the big concern is we're not done with the rain. We'll see more rain as we head on through this morning and perhaps into this afternoon and this evening, too.
Yeah, Paul, more rain. And the good news is, though, I think the worst of the rain, the most of it is still now offshore in the Atlantic. So there's good news there. The weather will be basically getting better in South Florida. We're not out of the woods yet, but overall, I think the worst is over. Thank you very much for that reporting. Let's have a look at now the latest advisory from the National Hurricane Center on potential tropical cyclone One. Kind of confusing terminology. I'm not a huge fan of it, but what it is an area of low pressure that's got some chance of developing into, let's say, a depression or even our first named storm. But if it's going to do it, I don't think it's going to do it today, and if it were to do it, it would be out here offshore over the Atlantic Ocean. Now, this is the most important part of it right now. This thing is moving northeast at 18 miles per hour. That's a good thing because That's a pretty quick motion, and overall, the weather, as I said, is going to be basically getting better. Look, you can see on the radar, the vast majority of the rain is over here. There's still some heavy showers and thunderstorms now coming into Lee Collier and Monroe counties in southwest Florida. Definitely still some more heavy rain to come into Miami-Dade and other counties in southeast Florida as well. But I would say still the vast majority of the rain is now pushed off into the Atlantic. There's some of the heavier showers and plenty of lightning strikes. Be careful out there. Still yet to come across the region. The wind, not so much of a factor, and that's good news, and never really has been much of a factor. However, we did see some reports of some wind gusts almost 60 miles per hour east of Miami at an elevated weather station at about 75 feet above the ocean surface there as this squall line essentially of thunderstorms moved through. So we did see some very strong wind gusts with that batch of very heavy rain and lightning as it's now offshore, thankfully. Farther to the north in central and north Florida, the weather is not that bad. Most of the rain offshore, but some onshore wind, perhaps some enhanced rip current risk and some significant wave action as well. Something to consider if you're planning on going to the beach, let's say in North Florida. But here's the issue with PTC, or Potential Tropical Cyclone One. There's a lot going on here. There are a lot of swirls, sort of centers of circulation here. That's actually the center of this whole system overall, with the pressure somewhere around 1,002 millibars. But most of the bad weather is here. So as long as we can have that asymmetry, where the lowest pressures and the worst weather are kind of separated, this thing is not likely to develop anytime soon into a tropical system. That would be a depression, a named storm, or beyond. And that's good news. We don't want to see that, and it doesn't really look like it's going to happen, as I said, with most of the bad weather leaning over now into the Atlantic thanks to some strong winds aloft coming in from the west. This thing has always been tangled up with tide and intimately associated with a dip in the jet stream there. So it's kind of always had this hybrid feature to it where it's kind of got this extra tropical component to it. But regardless of that, let's time out the weather and show that everybody better times are ahead, I think, coming for us for much of Florida. As you can see, this thing eventually moves out over the waters even as early as later on this afternoon and tonight. And then the weather improves markedly, Alex, across parts of Florida during the day tomorrow.
Let's get you over, well, now afternoon. Let's get you over to Brandon with a look at that forecast and what we're dealing with in the tropics.
Yes, that camera was a nice sight to see. Finally, we've been waiting on those sunny breaks to move in later this afternoon. And now, as soon as we hit the noon hour, we're starting to see some of those off to the west. But we still have heavy rain that's going to fall over the next hour in parts of our area. Wanted to start with the latest advisory from the Hurricane Center. This is the 11 a.m. advisory. It is still not a tropical storm. It is a tropical disturbance, so we call it Potential Tropical Cyclone One. I think it does have potential to organize enough into a tropical storm, and we'll take the name Alex after it moves across the Florida peninsula, or even jumps across the peninsula and moves out over the Atlantic by later on tonight and through the day tomorrow. So don't be surprised if you hear the name Alex from this as it's moving away from land. But a lot of this strong wind shear up near the clouds, I plotted it here in the background, kind of tearing apart the thunderstorms. It's very disorganized. You can kind of see the spin with it just to the west of Naples, but it's not one good consolidated center. It's kind of stretched out a little bit. So that's why it is still not a tropical storm. But we knew, regardless of whether or not that happens, that we would have some problems in terms of flooding. And we still have this. This is that live camera I've been showing you in downtown Miami. The heavy rain has started, and this is a very heavy rain, probably a little bit heavier than our what we saw earlier this morning. So I think the water may rise a little bit faster, and this water in downtown Miami is going to come up quick. This big round of rain isn't going to last too long. It's not going to be hours long. But we are looking at up to an hour of very heavy rain that will cause additional flooding and a very quick water rise, even north of downtown Miami. So we're getting up to Miami Shores, North Miami. And even as you get over to the coast towards Surfside, we're going to pick up some very heavy rain. I know we have extensive flooding along the A1A. So this goes all the way back to the southwest. Lots of lightning with this too, by the way. Down towards Florida Bay, and it's kind of running over the same areas. Kendall, Cutler Bay, Homestead, you're next in line to see some additional flooding here. Once we get the back edge of all of this to move through, and we are, let me go back to this, over in Broward, there's some sunny breaks. We'll see the sun come out. It is not going to be a complete washout of a late afternoon and evening. It's going to be more spotty, hit and miss downpours that could even add to a little bit more flooding. So we'll continue to watch that, but I do think overall as a whole we'll be improving late this afternoon and especially by the day tomorrow, but we're cranking the heat up. You want to see that in the 7-day forecast. We'll have an update on the storms too. I'll be back.
We've got crews fanned out all across South Florida. Right now we're going to start in Broward County though.
Local 10's Andrea Martinez continues our team coverage right now. She's live in Hollywood with the conditions there. And Andrea, I know you've been in this area all day long and she's giving us an update. What's it looking like now?
Well, I can tell you one thing, it hasn't let up, the rain here in this area. It's been raining all morning since we've been out here since about 5 a.m. You know, it's been rougher at some points of the morning than it is right now. I would say right now is about the best we've seen it, but it is still coming down. And take a look right now. I'm standing in about, I would say, half a foot of water here. This is just off Sheridan Street on North 14th Avenue, this residential area just completely inundated. We've seen several cars get stuck in this water. We've seen people try to walk by, residents blocking off the road so that cars don't drive by. Hey, listen, if you see any barricades on the roads today, don't try to drive around them. Don't try to drive through these low-lying areas that have a lot of water here, standing water, because it's just not a good idea. You're going to get stuck. You see that car right there that tried to pull out of their drive, got stuck, and it's still there. It's been there all morning. A tow truck tried to come and get it out earlier, and it couldn't. So it's just not a good idea. Turn around, don't drown. You know, we say it all the time. I want to give you a look now. I guess he left, but we just had another kayaker here in this area. City officials, of course, not encouraging that. These people making light of a bad situation here in their neighborhood. But you know, if you can stay home today, stay home. Avoid the roads. Here's that tow truck trying to get that car out of the road. You don't want this to be you. You don't want to be in this situation today. So if you see low-lying areas like this with a lot of water, take another route, seek an alternate route. Don't do it. Avoid it altogether. You see this tow truck headed there to get this car out of the road.
Well, this tropical weather system certainly did not underperform in terms of the heavy rainfall that we expected. We did think it was likely, as did the Hurricane Center, that it would become a tropical storm before reaching Florida. Didn't quite happen, even though it is a low pressure system with max winds of 40 miles an hour and a pressure of 1,002. But it's got an upper level trough involved with it, so it's never been a fully tropical kind of environment. And it never had, up to this point, enough of a well-defined center of circulation with this broad low and enough organization with the thunderstorms. But that is mostly just an academic thing. You know, we humans, we have to draw the line somewhere on what qualifies as a storm and what doesn't. This hasn't yet. It might very well become a tropical storm as it's moving out to sea tomorrow, and then Bermuda could get tropical storm conditions. Then it'll become post-tropical after that. But if you look over the last 36 hours, you can see it's always been lopsided. You've always had this middle upper level trough, and when you have wind shear like that, it's hard for the latent heating with the convection in the atmosphere to warm the core of the system and lower the pressure in a focused area down at the surface. So looking over the last 36 hours of visible and radar, you can see how the rain has always been on the east side. And look at all these individual swirls that are rotating around the main low pressure system. And so when you don't have a well-defined center and the convection is kind of spotty, although very heavy rain in some of those spots, it doesn't quite qualify as a tropical storm. But my goodness, we've had near record levels amounts of moisture, even for June 3rd and 4th out of this system. Thankfully, a lot of the heaviest rain did fall over the water by radar estimates, but too much of it fell in the metro areas of South Florida, especially Fort Lauderdale, Miami areas, and we've had as much as 11 inches in Coconut Grove, Chris. So it did not lack the impacts from water, as tropical storms and tropical storm wannabes often deliver.
And still raining in a few of these areas. We may squeak out another inch before all is said and done in some of those hard-hit areas. Let's talk about the tropical season heading into June. How often is it to get a storm this time of the year, and where do we look at development for storms early in the season? Well, we typically look here in the Gulf of Mexico, and that's right where we found potential tropical cyclone One. And sometimes we'll get some fronts that maybe drop off the coast of the Carolinas. Sometimes those can generate storms. So we look closer to home early in the season. It's not abnormal to get development there, and that lines up very well over the last, 70 years, going back to 1950. Now, beyond that, you can see the tracks of these. A lot of times they'll head further north. In 2021, we had 4 named storms. It was very active early on. And here we go. We haven't even yet hit Alex yet this year. But again, is there anything to be said on whether June is a lot of storms or no storms and what that indicates for the latter half of the season? There's really no correlation. We do know we've got about 100% left of the historical average hurricane season left. And when we look at the sea surface temperatures, this is interesting, Dr. Nab. Average for early June, and where we stand in Pensacola, we're actually cooler than average. But you look at a place like Tampa, 84-degree water temperatures. And it's not just the sea surface temperatures you have to look at. You got to look at where the eddies form. I learned a lot going down to the University of Miami. It's interesting all the research that's being done and how that impacts the upcoming season.
Yeah, great coverage, Chris, from South Florida. And, talking to people like Nick Shea, who they know how it's not just the sea surface temperatures, it's that deep warm water in the Gulf of Mexico. Gulf is almost always warm enough, but it's just warmer than average right now. But it didn't quite allow Alex to form in the Gulf of Mexico because too much wind shear, even though it had the warm water to help it fight against that wind shear. So if PTC One becomes a tropical storm in the next day or two between here and Bermuda, it would get the name Alex. If it doesn't, then Alex's name will be available for the next system. And what's concerning about the overall setup is that the average the sea surface temperatures, well, they're above average in the tropical and subtropical Atlantic and in the Gulf of Mexico. And you've still got the La Nina, the cooler than average waters in the East Pacific. And we know that historically in these La Nina years, we tend to have a lot more hurricanes. We have a brand new advisory in from the National Hurricane Center on what is still potential tropical cyclone One, but it looks like we might be getting a little bit closer over the next 12 to 24 hours to this becoming tropical storm Alex. But it's a 45-mile-an-hour tropical storm strength system. Doesn't quite have enough of the well-defined center and the organized thunderstorm activity to quite yet be declared a tropical storm. Moving northeast at 18, it is now the center of the low, has moved offshore of the east coast of Florida. No more tropical storm warnings for Florida, but northwest Bahamas still getting tropical storm conditions. Tropical storm watch for Bermuda, and it could be a tropical storm tomorrow into Monday. Still lopsided. Most of the heaviest rain is off into the Bahamas right now, but we still have some trailing bands here in Broward and Miami-Dade counties. Here's where the circulation center is. We can see how disorganized the overall system still is, but this center of the low is getting more involved with the thunderstorm activity, so it might be getting closer to becoming a tropical storm. Still some gusty winds on the north side of it, and we still have a few bands of rain coming through Miami-Dade and Broward counties over the next few hours, but things are going to definitely be improving.
Miles de cubanos en varias ciudades de la isla hoy amanecieron con un panorama desafiante entre inundaciones y los cortes en el servicio eléctrico. Lo peor se lo ha llevado La Habana, una ciudad desprotegida por décadas de abandono y castigada otra vez por la naturaleza. Así lucen más de 8 pulgadas de lluvia acumulada en una ciudad donde llovió sobre mojado. En la barriada Cuatro Caminos, en La Habana, registraron estas dramáticas imágenes del rescate a vecinos en botes.
Inundación de mi casa, la inundación de casa de Ángel Cusa, ¿no?
Y en las redes sociales hay decenas de videos como este, residencias tomadas por el agua. Un panorama que se repitió durante las pasadas horas en regiones del occidente cubano. Son instantáneas del poder destructivo de un sistema meteorológico que se ensañó con la urbe más poblada de Cuba. Unas 23 inundaciones han sido confirmadas en barriadas de los municipios Cerro, Plaza y Centro Habana.
Salió el río para afuera y no le dio tiempo a nadie sacar lo poquito que tienen.
Tuve que salir corriendo porque a mí no me dio tiempo a nada. El agua por la rodilla, yo bajo lluvia. La capital reporta hasta la fecha 111 derrumbes de viviendas.
Así la televisión cubana confirmaba esta tarde el catastrófico saldo estructural de la tormenta en una ciudad que durante décadas se ha estado cayendo a pedazos por la falta de mantenimiento a su fondo habitacional.
Los muebles y la gente empezó a perder todo.
Un abandono que padecen en silencio miles de ciudadanos, como esta vecina de 73 años, residente en La Habana Vieja.
No es fácil,
Hay que dormir hoy aquí abajo en una silla.
Mientras tanto,
a las 6 de la mañana, 11.862 consumidores sin servicio eléctrico.
la élite política del sistema en reunión emergente con mensajes poco claros sobre la estrategia para enfrentar la contingencia económica en la isla y apoyar a los damnificados.
Han arrojado un número de 38 edificaciones que son precisos de apuntalar y algunas de ellas demoler.
Tienen que ver con entrepisos de vivienda, tienen que ver con cubiertas de vivienda.
Bien, la peor de todas las noticias a esta hora es el número de víctimas fatales. Hasta el momento asciende a 4 personas entre las provincias de Pinar del Río y La Habana.
Y los representantes del gobierno cubano han comentado además que en algunos municipios la situación meteorológica es aún más compleja y que todavía no tienen un balance completo de los daños.
Welcome back into Weather Nation. We'll show you more footage coming out of Miami, Florida of all of the heavy rain from PTC. One, you can see a couple of cars just speeding through some of the flooded waterways. You can see this person here taking their time through all these puddles. Thankfully, conditions are improving across the Sunshine State, and look at all this flooding here in this neighborhood. Some cars, unfortunately, had to be towed out, and hopefully we will see conditions really improve to where we will see that sunshine continuing throughout this region, and we will see some sunshine on the increase as we head towards the Sunday. But look at this cool video of a kid enjoying the high water, doing a little bit of some wave boarding here in Florida. Now, let's talk more about some of the rain that we have seen over the last 24 hours. We have seen rainfall amounts between 8 to over 11 inches for Miami. Coral Gables have seen rainfall amounts around 10.77 inches in the last 24 hours. We'll look at these new daily records that went down across Fort Lauderdale, Miami, Naples, and West Palm Beach. We obliterated the old records, which were between 1 and 2 inches. We saw rainfall amounts approaching over 6 inches. And on the wind side of things, we saw winds between 50 to near 60 miles an hour. But look at the latest on PTC1. It continues to move away from Florida, which is some good news, but there are still a few showers and storms that may develop as we have some daytime heating throughout the region. We have lots of moisture too, and we're still seeing some impacts being felt across the Bahamas, but this will all continue to make its way into the island and the country of Bermuda. As we move towards our Monday, then it will just quickly race into the open Atlantic by Wednesday and Thursday. There's also a chance that this could become better organized out into the open Atlantic to where it may receive the name Alex. But for Florida, though, in the last 24 hours, we have seen wind gusts as high as 34 for Key West, 24 for Miami, 24 for Tampa, 29 for Port St. Lucie. But look at all the heavy rain we saw, especially along the Atlantic side of Florida. Rainfall estimates at least over 8 to 9 inches, and all the green dots you're looking at are all flood reports. But we will continue to see improving conditions throughout the rest of our Saturday. And for Miami, again, we did see a record rainfall amount over 5 inches for Saturday. Then for Juno Beach, we saw a rainfall record of 4.67 inches, but we'll get that updated record for this location, and we'll be sure to pass that along for you as we go into the evening. But again, we have seen quite a bit of heavy rain across the state of Florida, but this rainfall amounts actually, you can compare it to previous systems like Michael. And for more information about that, here's meteorologist Steve Glazier.
As we saw with potential tropical cyclone One on Saturday, the first weekend of June 2022, it doesn't matter with these systems if they are named or how strong they are really for some of these flooding impacts. You look at some of the scenes from Miami, Florida, late Friday night, early Saturday morning. I mean, dozens of streets just inundated with this water, people driving into that, which we never advertised to do. But this rainfall was really impressive. I mean, preliminary numbers out of Miami, 11.05. Now, again, still subject to change, but at least eclipsing that 11-inch mark. And when we compare it to previous systems, at least recent tropical systems, to either make a landfall or swipe through Florida, it's remarkable to look at. This year, PTC One, it was not a tropical system, wasn't named, but it had tropical storm force strength winds at 40 miles an hour. But again, unnamed really. At 11.05 inches, you compare it to Fred Tropical Storm, actually named storm in 2021, had 8.93 inches. Nestor a few years ago, 7.77. And then you look back to 2018, Michael, I mean, that was a major hurricane. They ended up classifying that thing as a Category 5 hurricane in the Florida Panhandle. Max rain in Florida was 11.62 inches. So the unnamed storm, so to speak, that would have been Alex, but it didn't make it there. This first weekend of June 2022, PTC One ended up dropping almost a foot of rain. Always important to watch the hazards of the forecast.
This is WPTV News Channel 5 at 11.
Now at 11, it didn't have a name, but it still packed a punch, flooding across South Florida after heavy downpours drenched many area streets, and Miami was hit especially hard.
Some good news tonight for parents whose children only drink special formula. But first at 11, our weather. Here's a look outside this evening, and thankfully it's the calm after the storm.
WPTV First Alert meteorologist John Gerard joining us with more on our day that began much differently, right, John?
Yeah, all's well that ends well, right? A lot of folks really wanted the rain, and it came and it went. And considering the system didn't have a name, it surely dumped a lot of rain. Well, the 11 o'clock advisory is in, and don't worry, it's not going to come back and get us a second time, do one of those loop-de-loops. This one's moving out to sea and is going to be leaving us alone now. Get us a little bit of a breeze overnight tonight, especially down by the beaches, and that's about it. 145 miles to the east-northeast now of Fort Pierce, and continuing to move farther away northeast to 20. It still has winds of 45 miles an hour. Considering it doesn't have a closed circulation, it's looking still pretty ominous in terms of the overall strength of a system that's still considered sort of ragged looking, right? Anyway, you can see the track, the cone on this as it heads out into the ocean. It'll be near Bermuda by sometime around Monday afternoon, Monday evening, with winds of about 45 miles an hour. Still a chance. National Hurricane Center says there's still a window of opportunity for this to become purely tropical, or at least subtropical, and get a name Alex in the next 12 to 24 hours. So you see a big blow up of storms. Doesn't that look familiar, right? We saw that down in the Caribbean. We saw that down by Mexico earlier in the week, and it still looks exactly the same now as it did about 3 or 4 days ago. And everybody along the path is going to get about 5 to 10 inches of rain there, maybe out to Bermuda as well. Good news, though, everything else is quiet in the tropics tonight, so once that is completely gone, there is nothing else to track, at least for the next several days. Back with the rest of my forecast in just a few minutes.
Welcome back. Miami-Dade Fire Rescue on patrol in North Miami-Dade today. The flood unit had trucks and boats at the ready to help residents in need. One man attempted to drive through the streets but ended up stuck in the water. He was able to get out and waited on top of his car until crews arrived to get him to higher ground. Now, a much different scene at this hour. This is a live look at downtown Miami. Skies finally clearing out, and once the storm stopped, we sent Chopper 4 to check out some of the flooding across South Florida today. Here's what we saw. Our tour starting in Pompano Beach. It's the first of many places we found cars and trucks trying to navigate flooded streets. Within minutes, we spotted a pump station pushing out that excess water. Over in Melrose Park, we saw trucks removing water from Southwest 29th Avenue. In Davie, it was tractor trailers navigating the high waters. There were flooded parking lots in Aventura and streets making for slower than normal travel by City Place in Doral. Northwest 79th Avenue on the east side of the city lived up to its reputation for flooding. The clouds and rain gave way to this sight that never gets old. Downtown Miami drying out after a long 24 hours. By the Frost Science Museum downtown, we saw a pump station set up near a stranded car. By 3:30 in the afternoon, the streets of Brickell Avenue were again dotted with pedestrians and cars instead of lined with floodwaters covering the crosswalks. The parking lot at Southland Mall was still showing signs of heavy rainfall, but a tour of Cutler Bay, Palmetto Bay, and Pinecrest all showed good news: dry streets. Our final stop, Miami Beach, where the typically flooded 5th and Alton is dry as can be Saturday afternoon. But by Miami Beach Senior High School, we did find some flooded neighborhood streets. The current visible from the air. Also visible, this driver dealing with what so many are dealing with Saturday, a stalled car on Prairie Avenue needing to get away from the floodwaters. Back up in Broward, Hollywood found flooded streets remained late into the afternoon. Water bubbled up from a drain in one location as people waded through the water not far away. Well, the severe weather leaving many homes in the dark even hours after the storms have passed. In Broward, 179 customers are without power right now. In Miami-Dade, nearly 3,900 homes are experiencing outages. Over in Monroe, Florida Keys Electric is reporting 40 customers are still in the dark tonight. We send things over to CBS 4 meteorologist Jennifer Correa. Hey, Jen.
Hey, Carly. So we're seeing much better conditions, thankfully, because we really can't use any more rain. I mean, we've seen the flooding. We see how bad it is out there, and we just need some sunshine, which we will get once the sun comes up tomorrow. Right now on radar, we're just tracking one last feeder band, a little tail setting up behind that disturbance, and it's very light. It's also a quick moving feeder band, and it's moving over the 18-mile stretch. It's going to wrap around the upper Keys, bring a little quick drizzle, and that's about it.
Good Sunday morning to you. I'm Taylor Hernandez. Thank you for joining us this morning, June the 5th. We're going to get to your news headlines in just a moment, but first, we made it through a wild weather day yesterday. Tropical weather blew through South Florida, never reaching tropical storm levels until that storm moved offshore. But now that it's moved off the coast, the National Hurricane Center officially named that Tropical Storm Alex. Here to break it all down for us, let's bring in first warning meteorologist Vanessa Vanette. Vanessa, good morning.
Good morning, Taylor. And yes, we finally have Tropical Storm Alex, but way offshore of the Palm Beaches and the Treasure Coast. On the latest advisory, 5 a.m., it is speeding up northeast at 22 miles per hour. A little better organized this early morning. That's why it's called a tropical storm finally, with sustained winds of 50 miles per hour. But all the convection on the east side of it, it will eventually track towards the northeast and impacting Bermuda on Monday into Tuesday. I'll have the forecast track in just a second, but it is nice and clear outside. We just have a couple clouds over Boca and over West Palm Beach just early morning. And good news, it is dry on our radar compared to yesterday. Vero Beach down into Boca, clear skies outside. Later on, we could see some showers, a few thunderstorms late in the evening hours. I'll say after 4 and 5 o'clock, just west of the highways. Temperatures warming up very quickly in the 80s by 11 o'clock in the morning with lots of sunshine in the forecast.
But right now we want to focus on Tropical Storm Alex, and so we want to bring in hurricane expert Dr. Greg Postel. And people are thinking, okay, Tropical Storm Alex, when did that happen?
Yes, it happened last night. It was, you're right about that, Molly, a potential a candidate for becoming one of these. Yesterday we talked about that as it moved through Florida, but now is a bona fide tropical storm and strengthening, I might add. Fortunately, doing so away from the coast and moving farther away from the coastline of the United States. But Bermuda might have a little bit of a windy, rainy event on their hands in the next day or so as the system overall races to the northeast at 22 miles per hour. So that's good news. We're looking good right now weather-wise up and down the coastline here. This is an interesting pattern that I just noticed on the satellite and radar pictures. You might be confused because you'd be seeing some radar echoes moving in this way and some are moving that way. You're like, what is going on? Well, the ones that are going this direction toward the southwest are the lower level showers that are very tall, but they're moving and swirling around Tropical Storm Alex. The clouds that are going in this direction and the precipitation that's being detected is at much higher altitude. So you're really looking at two different phenomena ongoing. The ones coming closer to the coast are associated, believe it or not, with a far distant periphery of Alex, fortunately, that is now moving away. But we're looking good right now. Charleston, Savannah, Jacksonville, all the beaches, maybe an enhanced rip current risk today. That does appear to be the primary hazard with some perhaps larger than typical waves. But the weather not going to be so bad. It's going to entice you to go to the water, but be very careful, of course, and mind the flags that are posted by the lifeguards there for the rip current threats and the like. So there's the center of circulation circulation of Alex. You can see the weather conditions up and down the beaches. The winds are parallel to or slightly offshore, so I don't expect any coastal flooding there. But Alex is in way better shape now than it was this time yesterday, and thankfully it's doing all that well out in the Atlantic, and it is expected to continue to move in that direction. By the way, there's Bermuda, so the center of Alex, let's say in about 24 to 36 hours, may pass very close to Bermuda with some gusty winds and showers there before moving and dissipating, Molly, far out in the Atlantic, thankfully so in this case.
Or wind out of the north-northwest right now. Some areas seeing more of a westerly wind, anywhere between 3 to 5 miles per hour. Light winds this morning. All is quiet and definitely needed, especially after the flooding rain we saw the last couple of days. Storm tracker also quiet for Miami-Dade and Broward County and for much of the Florida Keys. Just picking up on some showers near the dry Tortugas and across the Florida Straits. The ones across the Florida Straits going into portions of the Bahamas, that is a trail of moisture that leads to this big area right here, and that's where we find Tropical Storm Alex, which was potential storm number 1. And as you can see, the advisory, the 11 a.m. advisory, is now coming in, and they issued an advisory, a special one at 8:45, because they saw that Alex had strengthened since the 8 a.m. advisory. They had upped those winds up to 60 miles per hour. Right now, the advisory is still coming in, but it looks like winds remain at 60 miles per hour. And one thing has changed, though. It has gained a forward speed just a little bit, now moving at 23 miles per hour. And instead of towards the northeast, it's now beginning to move towards the east-northeast. It is being tracked out of Bermuda, but because the full advisory has not come out, it won't show up here. You can still see that not much change as far as that moisture is concerned. This is where we find the location of Alex, and this is where all the moisture is. And there it just finished coming in. It's being tracked. It's a little over 550 miles to the west of Bermuda. A tropical storm warning has been issued for the island chain, where they're expecting tropical storm conditions later on Monday afternoon. After that, it will remain over the open waters of the Atlantic. No other threat to land other than Bermuda.
Tracking the tropics, keeping an eye on Alex out there in the Atlantic. It's now a tropical storm. It moved through Florida as a disturbance and then heading into the Atlantic. The center of circulation looking a bit more organized at this hour. It's going to be a fish storm heading out to sea, not a threat to us at all, and it's expected to become a remnant low by the middle of the week. Here's a look so far this season. One named storm. It's Alex. As we head into the rest of the season, we're looking at an above average. NOAA's forecasting anywhere from 14 to 21 named storms. Colorado State University actually increased their numbers with the latest outlook, increased it to about 20 named storms. So they're also forecasting very above average season as we head through the rest of summer.
First named storm of the Atlantic hurricane season is headed toward Bermuda. This after killing 3 people in Cuba and flooding parts of South Florida. WPTV First Alert meteorologist John Gerard joins us with new information on the storm's track.
John, the 11 o'clock advisory is in, even though the storm had no name yesterday when it dumped record rainfall in parts of South Florida. It has a name today. It's Alex, and it's nearing hurricane strength. The 11 o'clock advisory saying the winds now top maximum sustained winds are 70 miles an hour. It's becoming extra tropical, which means it's losing some of its tropical characteristics right now, but still nonetheless nearing hurricane strength as it moves closer to Bermuda later on tonight. It's moving off to the east-northeast at 28 miles an hour. Going to be making a close pass toward the island of Bermuda between about 8 o'clock in the morning and noon tomorrow, and then out over the open waters of the Atlantic from there. Now, you'll be happy to know that there is nothing else in the tropics that we're watching tonight. We're off to a quick start to hurricane season, but the rest of the Gulf, the Caribbean, and the Atlantic is relatively quiet. But the tail extending to the southwest out of Alex is kind of lurking over portions of central Cuba. Something to keep an eye on, because some of the computer models say that that moisture might start moving back towards South Florida by around Tuesday and Wednesday.
All right, PTC One swamping South Florida, causing serious flooding in the Miami metro. High water halfway up cars, stalling them out with horns blaring. You'll hear that in a second. Almost sounds like a siren going off out there. There it goes. Miami Fire Rescue responding to multiple calls of stranded vehicles overnight Friday into Saturday morning, where some isolated areas did get over a foot of rainfall. And in Cuba, at least 3 are dead after heavy rainfall and landslides were triggered by potential tropical cyclone One. Rushing water raging across streets, cars stalled out, people trying to push their vehicles to safety in the high water in Havana. According to Cuba's civil defense organization, homes and the power grid were also damaged, causing about 50,000 outages this past Friday evening. And remember, this thing actually started out as a major, well, almost major hurricane. Category 2 Hurricane Agatha made landfall right along the southern coast of Mexico, then kind of got lost in the mountainous terrain of Mexico, kind of tearing it up. And then what was left of it, we saw that moisture come out over the Yucatan and kind of thread the needle there between Cuba and the Yucatan. And we saw plenty of moisture leading to that deadly flooding in Cuba. And of course, the flooded streets right here in South Florida came ashore across southwest Florida sometime Friday afternoon, Friday evening, and it just brought waves and waves of very heavy rain. And it added up in these gauges here, and that's why we saw so many issues with trying to get around in Miami. Cars were stuck on the exit ramp around I-395, and you also had water moving pretty high and even some of the trucks. So there were some issues out there. There were cars trying to use the median to get past some of those flooded roadways, which of course we do not advise. But look at these totals. We're up around 14.85 inches. That was Hollywood, Margate 14.79, Biscayne Bay, Biscayne Park, also Palmetto Bay, Coral Terrace, all up and over 10 inches of rainfall. So even a tropical system without a name, it wasn't even a depression when it came through Florida and it caused that kind of rain. It caused this kind of wind. You had 52-mile-per-hour winds. That was your higher gust at Delray Beach, Florida, Princeton, Florida, 51. Lots of 40s out there too. Saw a little bit of damage out there, Jim, and also some power outages with that wind and rain that came through.
Yeah, and Kelly, you know, 4 to 8 inches of rain in the lower, middle, and upper Keys. That's a lot of rainfall as well for the Keys. Hey, guys, potential Tropical Cyclone One upgraded to Tropical Storm Alex after Florida. You're looking live at Pembroke in Bermuda here. Look at the 76-degree temperature there, gusts to 27, but the white caps on the water here. We've got tropical storm warnings in effect. As a matter of fact, we just had our highest wind gust at Hamilton at 56 miles an hour of the whole entity, whether it be PTC One or Alex. All right, Bermuda, again, you're going to be dealing with these winds for the next several hours, and then things will gradually wind down with Tropical Storm Alex. So let's talk about it. All the weather, of course, is being sheared well off to the north and east of it. I should say sustained rain and, you know, windy showers and things like that. But you're in the dry. So these are just dry gusts that are going on with maybe just a few sprinkles, little drizzle from time to time. There's the circulation center right there, to the north and west of Bermuda. Not very long, not very big island, but a beautiful one at that. If you ever want a nice trip to a really cool place, head out to Bermuda. I just love this place here. Tropical storm force, and everybody's so doggone nice. 205 miles from the center. So that's pretty big and broad, certainly, for this thing, and not surprising we've got it going on. As I mentioned, the highest gust of its life so far. You saw the 52 in Florida. Now here's 56 as a tropical storm. So that's right in the wheelhouse, and that's why the tropical storm warnings continue for Bermuda, not surprisingly. This will continue to take on what we call extratropical characteristics. In other words, it will continue to slowly but surely lose its tropical characteristics and spread out its wind field even more and more oblong as it continues to head off toward the north and east. But the damage has been done. Looks like a nice day today with the subsidence, unfortunately, with the water, too. So a little longshore current for you on the southeast coast, making for some dangerous swim conditions on the east coast. But a good day to play golf, especially at Kiowa. Oh, what a beautiful course there near Charleston. High rip current down in Florida, though. We improve our beaches today, and obviously a lot of sunshine coming out. All the guidance takes this to the northeast, and as I mentioned, continues to make it go extra tropical. Kelly.
And the rain caused, of course, by what is now Tropical Storm Alex, still out there, passing right now near Bermuda.
And here's Weather Authority meteorologist Luke Doris with your tropical update.
Well, we do expect some flooding to occur, but let me be clear. This is not the event that we had over the weekend. We're not looking at another foot, but because we got a foot of rain in spots, it will flood more easily than normal. And it's a wet forecast. I mean, we expect that in June, don't we? But it's kind of a soggy stretch here. Let's show you what's going on the radar. Some showers trying to lift out from the near shore waters. Those may brush in, but really we're going to be watching the sea breeze, our old friend the sea breeze. It sparks up afternoon thunderstorms almost every day here in South Florida. It will do that today. We have one that's just trying to get going. This is the only one over land areas right now around Kendall and Pinecrest, and that's moving to the northeast. Let's check out the future radar, and you can see it. Yeah, there we go. This is by 2 o'clock and some spotty downpours. It's not a big blanket, a big shield of rain where everybody's just soaked and it's a washout. Not that kind of day, but pockets of heavy rain. So we'll go 50% rain coverage. About half of us will see rain this afternoon, and again, flooding will be possible. Here's Alex, 65-mile-per-hour tropical storm. Look at this thing. It's just getting pulled apart. apart by the strong upper level winds. In fact, even though it still has a big area of tropical storm force winds that are just about to leave Bermuda, it's just about to transition away from being a tropical storm and become a northern type low, and the Hurricane Center will be done watching this. But what we will watch this week is this big long tail that's left in its wake. It's kind of like if you take your finger and put it through a stream, how it leaves ripples behind it. Well, tropical systems do that too, and that's all that moisture, the disturbed atmosphere, that's what we're going to be dealing with throughout the week. So we're going to break all that down coming up. Guys?
Talk to our hurricane expert, Dr. Rick Knabb, about historical June storms and why June can oftentimes be an underestimated month, Dr. Knabb.
Yeah, and as impactful as pre-Alex and Alex have been, it's far from overall the most impactful June system we've ever dealt with. And every week in the month of June in history has had a bad hurricane or tropical storm. And sometimes we wait till the end of the month to get something really bad. And interestingly, 12 years ago, the name Alex was used and it wasn't retired. And you could make an argument that maybe it should have been, with the 12 fatalities in Mexico and the immense flooding in Monterey, and also even in deep South Texas, some agricultural damage. And this was a system that rapidly intensified to a Category 2 hurricane right before coming ashore. A $1.5 billion storm 12 years ago, if you adjust that to current dollars, would be even more expensive. Next on our list is Hurricane Alma, 1966, a major hurricane just west of southwestern Florida. 6 fatalities in Florida, but as it was getting going, it took a number of fatalities in Central America, mainly Honduras. $200 million storm at the time. Fortunately, in Florida, most of the impacts were in more sparsely populated areas. And then there was Agnes, 1972. Barely a hurricane when it made landfall in the Florida Panhandle, but even though it was the most expensive hurricane in U.S. history at the time, at about $2 billion, if you adjust that to current, cost estimates 50 years later, it would be a $14.3 billion storm. Not mainly for what it did when it came ashore as a hurricane, but as a strong tropical storm that stalled and caused the rainfall-induced flooding disaster, mainly in Pennsylvania and New York, 122 fatalities overall, and that was in the 3rd week of June. And then there was Audrey, 1957, and this is arguably the worst one of all in June history, as a Category 3 coming ashore, not all that far from where Laura and Delta did, but farther to the west, and it brought storm surge 25 miles inland. And then I put this one on the list, even though it's not a hurricane, because Allison, 2001, is the most expensive and deadliest tropical storm in U.S. history, with all the flooding in southeast Texas. Only Harvey makes Allison seem worse, Chris.
Potential Tropical Cyclone One left behind a lot of rain, but also major beach erosion here on Florida's east coast. You can still hear the wind, too. We've got problems from our potential tropical cyclone. Dr. Knabb, I think so many times, other systems, whether it's a storm, a hurricane, of course, gets the headlines, but we see what these even forming systems can do.
Yeah, it was an amazing thing to watch a tropical storm getting organized right over the state of Florida. They don't always form somewhere else and then strike us as tropical storms. And this is what it looked like on Saturday. And I highlight Vero Beach right here to show you where the center of the developing storm, the center of the low, was coming off of the coast. And right on the north side, you had that really strong onshore flow. And that just pounded the coast for a while. And this was a fairly large low, so it had a fairly decent fetch. And that is going to produce some beach erosion. Even strong easterly flow south of a high can do that on the east coast of Florida. This coast gets battered quite a bit, but it had a really bad day on Saturday. Now, Alex is losing its tropical characteristics to the point where the Hurricane Center is now designating this no longer a tropical storm. Now it's post-tropical cyclone. So remember all the terminology? Potential tropical cyclone. It's probably going to become a depression or storm. And then it was one, and now it used to be one. And the problems that it's causing are diminishing in Bermuda, and they are still going to be getting some rip current risks there in the Carolinas even into tomorrow, Chris.
Just
Days before Hurricane Andrew hit, even forecasters at the National Hurricane Center didn't think much of the tropical system. Our former hurricane specialist, Max Mayfield, worked for the NHC during Andrew. I sat down with Max to talk about lessons learned and the changes he has seen firsthand when it comes to how we monitor and forecast tropical systems.
I remember well when the tropical wave came off the coast of Africa. It came off on the 14th of August. It looked like, you know, any normal tropical wave, nothing exceptional about it whatsoever.
Former National Hurricane Center Director Max Mayfield remembers every detail about Hurricane Andrew. At the time, Max was a hurricane forecaster.
Which, you know, was a dream job.
Everyone is coming. Back then, Max had been working the night shift and took a bit of a leap a week before Andrew would make landfall.
And we had an unwritten rule in those days not to start advisories at nighttime based on infrared satellite imagery. The resolution not as good as you know as the visible imagery in the daytime. But this looked so good on the European satellite that I wrote the first advisory on what eventually became Andrew. And I came home and told my wife, I sure hope it doesn't fall apart. I'll look like a fool. And a week later, I was praying it would fall apart.
All stores must close. Emergency evacuation is in effect.
Over the next few days, forecasters would watch as it strengthened a little before it struggled approaching the Caribbean.
In fact, on the 20th, the hurricane hunters went out there and could not even find a circulation. The hurricane forecaster on duty at that time had written an advisory saying that the plane can't find a circulation. This will be the last advisory unless regeneration occurs.
But Director Bob Sheets stepped in, pushing for just one more advisory.
I mean, all they had to do is hit that enter, and they would have, you know, killed off Andrew. He didn't want to stop advisories and then have to start it again. So that was a really smart thing to do. It did not become a hurricane until 2 days before it hit South Florida. So at least by, you know, early Sunday, we had everybody's attention. And then it kept, you know, moving westward and strengthened rapidly.
Until landfall.
The track forecast errors were over 100 miles in 24 hours back then. The 2-day forecast were somewhere around 250 miles. That's the average forecast error. So there was tremendous uncertainty, and that's with the track. Intensity was even harder. The intensity forecast had very little skill, and especially with rapid intensification.
Even with all the models, that skilled forecaster is really important.
Right, and the models, and you know, the models can afford to jump around. I mean, they do that all the time. The human does add value to the forecast.
But much has changed since then, with technology improving.
Overall, the one storm didn't change everything. It was the fact that the aircraft data, the satellite imagery, the surface data, the buoys, all the data has improved. The forecast tracks are much, much better than they were back in 1992.
Suppose we had all of that then. Forecasting Andrew, would you say would have been a completely different ball game? Would it have been an easier ball game?
Oh, goodness, yes. It would have been a lot easier, especially with the track forecasting. The models are much, much improved, and if you look at the forecast era, this is a real success story. It's never been all about the forecast. It's a huge team effort between the forecasters, like at the Hurricane Center and the forecast offices, the emergency management community and the local officials, you know, and the media. The media is a huge team player there because they can talk to everybody. And it doesn't matter if you have a perfect forecast, if people don't respond in the right way to protect themselves and their families and their homes, it's really all for nothing.
People who went through Andrew, do you think 30 years later, do you think they're complacent?
I think people that went through that donut, the eye wall around the eye, they're not ever going to forget. They'll never forget. what happened to their homes and some of their neighbors and loved ones that were killed. They'll remember. But I think we've had a lot of people move down to South Florida. We've got some people that have very short memories. And, you know, it's been a long time, 30 years since we've had an Andrew.
As Max said, it's important for everyone to listen to local officials when a storm is approaching.